half-combed with his fingers, but he smiled as he joined them. The thieves in this city are as numerous as minnows in reeds, and they will talk to you if you buy a cup of something. I have talked with two men who claim to have seen a woman with a white streak in her hair above the left ear. I think I believe one of them. So they are here, Elaine said, but Naive shook her head. Perhaps. More than one woman can have a white streak in her hair. He could not say how old she was, Julian said, hiding a yawn behind his hand. No age at all, he claimed. He joked that maybe she was Aes Sedai. You go too fast, Nynaeve told him in a tight voice. You do us no good if you bring them down on us. Julian flushed darkly. I am careful. I have no wish for Leandrin to put her hands on me again. I do not ask questions. I talk. Sometimes of women I used to know. Two men bit on that white streak, and neither ever knew it was more than a scrap of idle talk over cheap ale. Tonight maybe another will swim into my net. Only this time maybe it will be a fragile woman from Kyrian with very big blue eyes. That would be Tamela Kinderode. Bit by bit I will narrow where they have been seen until I know where they are. I will find them. Or I will. Tom sounded as if he thought that much more likely. Rather than thieves, would they not be meddling with nobles and politics? Some lord in this city will begin doing what he usually does not, and he will draw me to them. The two men eyed one another. In another moment, Elaine expected one of them to offer to wrestle. Men. First Julian and Domon, now Julian and Tom. Very likely Tom and Domon would get in a fist fight to complete it. Men. That was the only comment she could think of. Perhaps Elaine and I will succeed without either of you, Nynaeve said dryly. We will begin looking ourselves today. Her eyes barely shifted toward Elaine. At least, I will. Elaine may need a little more rest to recover from the voyage. Setting the cloth down carefully, Elaine used both hands to pick up the cup in front of her. The thick, gray-green liquid tasted worse than it smelled. Shuddering, she made herself keep swallowing. When it hit her stomach, for an instant she felt like a cloak flapping in a high wind. Two pairs of eyes can see better than one, she told Nynaeve, setting the empty cup back down with a clink. 100 pairs can see even better, Julian said hastily. And if that Ileana eel truly senses people out, we will have at least that many, what with the thieves and cut-purses. We will find these women for you if they can be found, Tom said. There is no need for you to stir from the inn. This city has a dangerous feel, even if Leandrin is not here. Besides which, Julian added, if they are here, they know the two of you, they know your faces. Much better if you stay here at the inn, out of sight. Elaine stared at them in amazement. A moment gone, they had been trying to stare each other down. Now they were shoulder to shoulder. Nynaeve had been right about them causing trouble. Well, the daughter heir of Andor was not about to hide behind Master Julian Sandar and Master Tom Marilyn. She opened her mouth to tell them so, but Nynaeve spoke first. You are right, she said calmly. Elaine stared at her incredulously. Tom and Julian looked surprised, and at the same time disgustingly satisfied. They do know us, Nynaeve went on. I took care of that this morning, I think. Here is Mistress Rendra with our breakfast. Tom and Julian exchanged disconcerted frowns, but they could say nothing with the innkeeper smiling at them all through her veil. About what I asked you, Nynaeve said to her as the woman placed a bowl of honeyed porridge in front of her. Ah, yes, it will be no problem to find the clothes to fit both of you, and the hair. You have such lovely hair, so long, it will be the work of no time to put it out. She fingered her own deep golden braids. Tom's and Julian's faces made Elaine smile. They might have been ready for arguments. They had no defense against being ignored. Her head was actually feeling a little better. Nynaeve's vile mixture seemed to be working. As Nynaeve and Rendra discussed costs and cut and fabric, Rendra wanted to duplicate her clinging dress, pale green today. Nynaeve was opposed, but seemed to be wavering. Elaine took a spoon of porridge to wash the taste from her mouth. It reminded her that she was hungry. There was one problem none of them had mentioned yet, one that Tom and Julian did not know. If the Black Argyll was in Tanchico, then so was whatever it was that endangered land. Something able to bind him with his own power. Finding Leandrin and the others was not enough. They had to find that, too. Suddenly, her newfound appetite was completely gone.
Chapter 40. Hunter of Trollocs. Remnants of the early morning rain still dripped from the leaves of the apple trees, and a purple finch hopped along a limb where fruit was forming that would not be harvested this year. The sun was well up, but hidden behind thick gray clouds. Seated cross-legged on the ground, Aaron unconsciously tested his bowstring. The tightly wrapped, waxed cords had a tendency to go slack in wet weather. The storm Varen had called up to hide them from pursuit the night of the rescue had surprised even her with its ferocity, and beating rains had come 3 more times in the 6 days since. He believed it was 6 days. He had not really thought since that night, only drifted as events took him, reacting to what presented itself. The flat of his axe blade dug into his side, but he hardly noticed. Low, grassy mounds marked generations of Abaras buried here. The oldest among the carved wooden headpieces, cracked and barely legible, bore dates nearly 300 years old, over graves indistinguishable from undisturbed ground. It was the mounds smoothed by rains, but barely covered by grass that stabbed him. Generations of Abaras buried here, but surely never 14 at one time. Aunt Nian over by Uncle Carlin's older grave, with their 2 children beside her. Great Aunt Eelson in the row with Uncle Elward and Aunt Magda, and their 3 children, the long row with his mother and his father. Adora, Dizelle, and little Pate. A long row of mounds with bare, wet earth still showing through the grass. He counted the arrows remaining in his quiver by touch. 17. Too many had been damaged, worth recovering only for the steel arrowheads. No time to make his own. He would have to see the Fletcher in Emmons Field soon. Bull Daughtry made good arrows, even better than Tam. A faint rustle behind his back made him sniff the air. "What is it, Daniel?" he said without looking around. There was a catch of breath, a moment of startled surprise, but Daniel Llewellyn said, "The lady is here, parent." None of them had gotten used to him knowing who was who before he saw them, or in the dark. But he no longer cared what they found strange. He frowned over his shoulder. Daniel looked leaner than he had. Farmers could only feed so many at once, and food had been feast or famine as the hunting went. Mostly famine. And the lady? The Lady Fael. And Lord Luke, too. They came from Emmons Field. Perrin rose smoothly, taking long strides that made Daniel hurry to keep up. He managed not to look at the house, the charred timbers and sooty chimneys that had been the house where he grew up. He did scan the trees for his lookouts, those nearest the farm. Close to the waterwood as it was, the land had plenty of tall oak and hemlock, and good-sized ash and bay. Thick foliage hid the lads well. Drab farm clothes made for good hiding. So even he had difficulty picking them out. He would have to talk with those farther out. They were supposed to see that no one came close without a warning. Even Fael and this Luke. The camp, in a large thicket where he had once pretended to be in a far wilderness, was a rough place among the undergrowth, with blankets strung between trees to make shelters, more scattered on the ground between the small cook fires. The branches dripped here too. Most of the nearly 50 men in the camp, all young, were unshaven, either an imitation of Perrin or because it was unpleasant shaving in cold water. They were good hunters. He had sent home many who were not, but unaccustomed to more than a night or two outdoors at a time, and not used to what he had been doing either. Right then, they were standing around gaping at Fail and Luke, and only 4 or 5 had longbow in hand. The rest of the bows lay with the bedding, and the quivers too, more often than not. Luke stood idly flipping the reins of a tall black stallion, the very pose of indolent red-coated arrogance, cold blue eyes ignoring the men around him. The man's smell stood out among the others, cold and separate too, almost as if he had nothing in common with the men around him, not even humanity. Fail came hurrying to meet Perrin with a smile, her narrow divided skirts making a soft whisk-whisk as gray silk brushed silk. She smelled faintly of sweet herbal soap and of herself. "Master Luhan said we might find you here." He meant to demand what she was doing there, but found himself putting his arms around her and saying into her hair, "It's good to see you. I've missed you." She pushed back enough to look up at him. "You look tired." He ignored that. He had no time to be tired. "You got everyone safely to Women's Field?" "They are at the Wine Spring Inn." She grinned suddenly. "Master Olvir found an old halberd and says if the white folks want them, they will have to go through him. Everyone's in the village now, Perrin. Baron and Alana, the warders. Pretending to be someone else, of course, and loyal. He certainly created a sensation, even more than Bane and Chiad." The grin faded into a frown. "He asked me to deliver a message to you. Alana vanished twice without a word, once alone. Loyal said Ivan seemed surprised to find her gone. He said I wasn't to let anyone else know." She studied his face. "What does it mean, Perrin?" "Nothing, maybe. Just that I can't be sure I can trust her. Baron warned me against her, but can I trust Baron? You say Bane and Chiad are in Emmons Field? I suppose that means he knows about them." He jerked his head toward Luke. A few of the men had approached him, asking diffident questions, and he was answering with a condescending smile. "They came with us," she said slowly. "They are scouting around your camp now. I do not think they have a very high opinion of your sentries. Perrin, why didn't you want Luke to know about the Aiel?" "I've talked to a number of people who were burned out." Luke was too far to overhear, but he held his voice low. "Counting Flan Lewin's place, Luke was at 5 on the day they were attacked, or the day before. Perrin, the man's an arrogant fool in some ways. I hear he's hinted at a claim to one of the Borderland thrones, for all he's told us he's from Murandy. But you cannot really believe he is a dark friend. He gave some very good advice in Emmons Field. When I said everyone was there, I meant everyone." She shook her dark head wonderingly. "Hundreds and hundreds of people have come in from north and south, from every direction, with their cattle and their sheep, all talking of Perrin Golden Eyes' warnings. Your little village is preparing to defend itself if need be. And Luke has been everywhere the last days." "Perrin, oh," he gasped, wincing. Trying to change the subject, he said, "From the south. But this is as far south as I've gone. I haven't talked to a farmer more than a mile below the Wine Spring water." Fael tugged at his beard with a laugh. "News spreads, my fine general. I think half of them expect you to form them into an army and chase the Trollocs all the way back to the Great Blight. There will be stories about you in the Two Rivers for the next 1,000 years. Perrin Golden Eyes, hunter of Trollocs." "Light," he muttered. Hunter of Trollocs. There had been little so far to justify that. 2 days after freeing Mistress Luhan and the others, the day after Baron and Tomas rode on their own way, they had come on the still-smoking ruins of a farmhouse, he and the 15 Two Rivers lads with him then. After burying what they found in the ashes, it was easy enough to follow the Trollocs. between Gall's tracking and his own nose. The sharp-fetted stink of the Trollocs had not had time to fade away, not to him. Some of the lads had grown hesitant when they realized he meant what he had said about hunting Trollocs. If they had had to go very far, he suspected most would have drifted away when no one was looking. But the trail led to a thicket no more than 3 miles off. The Trollocs had not bothered with sentries. They had no murdroll with them to overawe their laziness. And the Two Rivers men knew how to stalk silently. 32 Trollocs died, many in their filthy blankets, pierced through with arrows before they could raise a howl, much less sword or axe. Daniel and Ban and the others had been ready to celebrate a great triumph, until they found what was in the Trollocs' big iron cookpot sitting in the ashes of the fire. Most dashed away to throw up, and then more than one wept openly. Perrin dug the grave himself. Only one. There was no way to tell what had belonged to whom. Cold as he felt inside, he was not sure he could have stood it himself, if there had been. Late the next day, no one hesitated when he picked up another fetid trail, though a few mutters wondered what he was following, until Gall found the tracks of hooves and boots too big for men. Another thicket, close to the waterwood, held 41 Trollocs and a fade, with sentries set, though most snored at their posts. It would have made no difference had they all been awake. Gall killed those that were, sliding through the trees like a shadow. The Two Rivers men were nearly 30 themselves by then. Besides, those who had not seen the cookpot had heard of it. They shouted as they shot, with a satisfaction not much less savage than the guttural Trolloc howls. The black-garbed murdroll had been last to die, a porcupine quilled with arrows. No one cared to recover a shaft from that, even after it finally stopped thrashing. That evening, the second rain came. Hours of drenching downpour with a sky full of roiling black clouds and stabbing lightning. Perrin had not smelled Trolloc scent since, and the ground had been washed clean of tracks. Most of their time had been spent avoiding White Cloak patrols, which everyone said were more numerous than in the past. The farmers Perrin had spoken to said the patrols seemed more interested in finding their prisoners again and those who had broken them free than in looking for Trollocs. Quite a few of the men had gathered around Luke now. He was tall enough for his red gold hair to show above their darker heads. He seemed to be talking, and they listening and nodding. "Let's see what he has to say," Perrin said grimly. The Two Rivers men gave way before Fail and him, with only a little prodding. They were all intent on the red-coated lord, who was indeed holding forth. "So the village is quite secure now. Plenty of people gathered together to defend it. I must say I enjoy sleeping under a roof when I can. Mistress Alvear at the inn provides a tasty meal. Her bread is among the best I've ever eaten. There truly is nothing like fresh baked bread and fresh churned butter, and putting your feet up of an evening with a fine mug of wine, or some of Master Alvear's good brown ale." "Lord Luke was saying we should go to Emond's Field, Perrin," Kenleon said, scrubbing his reddened nose with the back of a briny hand. He was not the only one who had been unable to wash as often as he would like, and not the only one coming down with a cold either. Luke smiled at Perrin, much the way he would have at a dog he expected to see do a trick. "The village is quite secure, but there is always a need for more strong backs." "We are hunting Trollocs," Perrin said coolly. "Not everyone has left their farms yet. And every band we find and kill means farms not burned and more people with a chance to reach safety." Will Alcine barked a laugh. He was not so pretty with a red puffy nose and a spotty 6-day growth of beard. "We've not smelled a Trolloc in days. Be reasonable, Perrin. Maybe we've killed them all already." There were mutters of agreement. "I do not mean to spread dissension." Luke spread his hands guilelessly. "No doubt you have had many great successes beside those we have heard of. Hundreds of Trollocs killed, I expect. You may well have chased them all away." I can tell you Emmons Field is ready to give you all a hero's welcome. The same must be true at Watch Hill for those who live up that way. Any Devon riders? Will nodded, and Luke clapped him on the shoulder with a hollow good fellowship. A hero's welcome, without a doubt. Anyone who wants to go home can, Aaron said in a level voice. Bail directed a warning frown at him. This was no way to be a general. But he did not want anyone with him who did not want to be there. He did not want to be a general, for that matter. Myself, I don't think the job is done yet, but it is your choice. No one took him up, though Will at least looked ready to. But 20 more stared at the ground and scuffed their boots in last year's leaves. Well, Luke said casually, if you have no Trollocs left to chase, perhaps it is time to turn your attentions to the White Cloaks. They are not happy at you Two Rivers folk deciding to defend yourselves. And I understand they meant to hang the lot of you in particular as outlaws for stealing their prisoners. Anxious frowns passed between a good many of the Two Rivers lads. It was then that Gaul came pushing through the crowd, followed close by Bane and Jihad. Not that the Aiel had to push, of course. The men cleared aside as soon as they realized who it was. Luke frowned at Gaul thoughtfully, perhaps disapprovingly. The Aielman stared back stony-faced. Will and Daniel and the others brightened at the sight of the Aiel. Most still believed hundreds more were hiding somewhere in the thickets and forests. They never questioned why all those Aiel stayed hidden, and Perrin certainly never brought it up. If believing in a few hundred Aiel reinforcements helped them keep their courage, well and good. What did you find? Perrin asked. Gaul had been gone since the day before. He could move as fast as a man on horseback, faster in woods, and he could see more. Trollocs, Gaul replied, as though reporting the presence of sheep, moving up through this well-named waterwood to the south. They number no more than 30, and I believe they mean to make camp on the edge of the forest and strike tonight. There are men still holding to the soil to the south. He gave a sudden wolfish grin. They did not see me. They will have no warning. Chiat leaned closer to Bane. He moves well enough for a stone dog, she whispered loudly enough to be heard 20 feet off. He makes little more noise than a lame bull. Well, Will, Perrin said, you want to go to Emmons Field? You can shave and maybe find a girl to kiss while those Trollocs have supper tonight. Will flushed dark red. I will be wherever you are tonight, Ibarra, he said in a hard voice. Nobody means to go home if there are Trollocs still about, Perrin, Kenley added. Perrin looked around at the others, meeting only agreeing nods. What of you, Luke? We would be pleased to have a lord and hunter for the horn with us. You could show us how it is done. Luke smiled fractionally, a gash on stone that never came close to those cold blue eyes. I regret the defenses of Emmons Field still need me. I must see to protecting your people should the Trollocs come there in greater numbers than 30, or the Children of the Light. My Lady Fayin, he held out a hand to assist her in mounting, but she shook her head. I will remain with Perrin, Lord Luke. Pity, he murmured, shrugging as if to say there was no accounting for women's taste. Tugging on his wolf-embroidered gauntlets, he swung into the black stallion's saddle smoothly. Good luck to you, Master Golden Eyes. I do hope you all have good luck. With a half bow to Fail, he whirled his tall horse showily and spurred him to a gallop that forced some of the men to leap out of his way. Fail frowned at Perrin in a manner that suggested a lecture on rudeness when they were alone. He listened to Luke's horse until he could hear it no more, then turned to Gaul. Can we get ahead of the Trollocs? Be waiting somewhere before they reach wherever they mean to stop. The distance is all right if we start now, Gaul said. They are moving in a straight line and not hurrying. There is a night runner with them. It will be easier surprising them in their blankets than facing them awake. He meant that the Two Rivers men might do better. There was no fear smell on him. There was certainly fear smell on some of the others, yet no one suggested that a confrontation with Trollocs up and alert, and a murderer to boot, might not be the best plan. They broke camp as soon as he gave the order, dousing the fires and scattering the ashes, gathering their few pots and mounting their ill-assorted horses and ponies. With the sentries in, Aaron reminded himself to have that word with them, they numbered nearly 70, surely enough to ambush 30 Trollocs. Van Alcine and Daniel each still led half. It seemed the way to keep arguments down, with Billy Aldai and Kenley and others each heading 10 or so. Will, too. He was not too bad a fellow, usually, when he could keep his mind off the girls. Fail rode Swallow close beside Stepper as they started south, with the Aiel running ahead. You truly do not trust him at all, she said. You think he is a dark friend. I trust you, my bow, and my axe, he told her. Her face looked sad and pleased at the same time, but it was the simple truth. For 2 hours, Gaul led them south before turning into the waterwood, a tangle of towering oak and pine and leatherleaf, bushy bay trees and cone-shaped red oil trees, tall round-topped ash and sweetberry and black willow, with thickets of vine-woven brush below. 1,000 squirrels chittered on the branches, and thrushes and finches and redwings darted everywhere. Aaron smelled deer and rabbits, too, and foxes. Tiny streams abounded, and rush-bordered pools and ponds dotted the forest, often shaded but sometimes open, from less than 10 paces across to a few almost 50. The ground seemed sodden after all the rain it had received, squelching under the horses' hooves. Between a large willow-ringed pond and a narrow rivulet a pace wide, perhaps 2 miles into the wood, Gaul halted. Here the Trollocs would come if they continued as they had been. The 3 Aiel melted into the trees to make sure of that and bring back warning of their approach. Leaving Fail and a dozen men to watch the horses, Aaron spread the others out in a narrow curve, a cup into which the Trollocs should march. After making certain each man was well hidden and knew what he was to do, he placed himself at the bottom of the cup, beside an oak with a trunk thicker than he was tall. Easing his axe in its belt loop, he knocked an arrow and waited. A light breeze blew in his face, swelling and falling. He should be able to smell the Trollocs long before they came in sight. They should be coming right at him. Touching the axe again, he waited. Minutes passed, an hour, more. How long before the shadow spawn appeared? Much longer in this damp, and the bowstrings would need to be changed. The birds vanished a moment before the squirrels went silent. Aaron drew a deep breath and frowned. Nothing. On that breeze, he should surely be able to smell Trollocs as soon as the animals sensed them. A vagrant gust brought on a putrid stink, like centuries-old sweat and rot. Whirling, he shouted, "They're behind us! Rally to me! Two Rivers to me!" Behind, the horses. "Fail!" Screams and shouts erupted from every side, howls and savage cries. A ram-horned Trolloc leaped into the open 20 paces away, raising a long, curved bow. Aaron drew fletchings to ear and fired in one smooth motion, reaching for another shaft as soon as his arrow cleared bow. His broadhead point took the Trolloc between its eyes. It bellowed once as it fell. And its arrow, the size of a small spear, took Perrin in the side like a hammer blow. Gasping with shock, he hunched over, dropping the bow and fresh arrow alike. Pain spread out in sheets from the black-fleshed shaft. It quivered when he drew breath, and every quiver shot out new pain. 2 more Trollocs leaped over their dead companion, wolf snout and goat horns, black-mailed shapes half again as tall as Perrin and twice as broad. Baying, they rushed at him, curved swords upraised. Forcing himself upright, he gritted his teeth and snapped the thumb-thick arrow off short, pulled his axe free and rushed to meet them. Howling, he realized dimly. Howling with rage that filmed his eyes red. They towered over him, their armor all spikes at elbows and shoulders, but he swung his axe in a frenzy as if trying to cut down a tree with every blow. For Adora. For Dazelle. "My mother!" he screamed. "Burn you, my mother!" Abruptly, he realized he was hacking at bloody shapes on the ground. Growling, he made himself stop, shaking with the effort as much as with the pain in his side. There was less shouting now, fewer screams. Was anyone left but him? "Rally to me! 2 rivers to me!" "2 rivers!" someone shouted frantically, off through the damp woods, and then another. "2 rivers!" 2. Only 2? "Fail!" he cried. "Oh, light, fail!" A flicker of black flowing through the trees announced a Murdral before he could see it clearly. Snake-like black armor down its chest, inky cloak hanging undisturbed by its running. As it came closer, it slowed to a sinuous, assured walk. It knew he was hurt, knew him for easy meat. Its pale-faced, eyeless stare stabbed him with fear. "Fail," it said mockingly. Its voice made the name sound like burned leather crumbling. "Your fail was delicious." Roaring, Perrin hurled himself at him. A black-bladed sword turned his first stroke, and his second, his third. The thing's slug-white face became fixed with concentration, but it moved like a viper, like lightning. For the moment, he had it on the defensive. For the moment. Blood trickled down his side. His side burned like a forge fire. He could not keep this up. And when his strength failed, that sword would find his heart. His foot slipped in the mud, churned up beneath his boots. The Fade's blade drew back, and a blurring sword half-severed the eyeless head, so it fell over on one shoulder in a fountain of black blood. Stabbing blindly, the Murdral staggered forward, stumbling, refusing to die completely, still instinctively trying to kill. Perrin scrambled out of its path, but his attention was all for the man coolly wiping his blade with a fistful of leaves. Ivan's color-shifting cloak hung down his back. "Elana sent me to find you. I almost didn't, the way you have been moving, but 70 horses do leave tracks." The dark, slender warder seemed as composed as if he were lighting his pipe before a fireplace. "The Trollocs were not linked to that." He indicated the Murdral with his sword. It had fallen, but still stabbed randomly. "More's the pity. But if you can gather your people together, they might not be willing to try you without one of the Faceless to goad them. I would estimate about 100 to begin. A few less now. You have bloodied them some." He began a calm survey of the shadows beneath the trees, only the blade in his hand indicating anything out of the ordinary. For a bare moment, Perrin gaped. Elana wanted him? She had sent Ivan? Just in time to save his life. Shaking himself, he raised his voice again. "2 rivers to me! For the love of the light, rally to me! Here! Rally here!" This time he kept it up until familiar faces appeared, stumbling through the trees. Blood-streaked faces, often as not. Shocked, staring faces. Some men half-supported others, and some had lost their bows. The Aiel were among them, apparently unhurt except that Gaul limped slightly. "They did not come as we expected," was all the Aielman said. "The night was colder than we expected. There was more rain than we expected." That was how he said it. Aiel seemed to materialize.
Hey, Babylon, how you doing?
With half the horses, including Stepper and Swallow, and 9 of the 12 men he had left with her. A scrape marred one cheek, but she was
Hope
alive.
you're doing good, Babylon.
He tried to hug her, but she pushed his arms away, muttering angrily over the broken-off arrow, even while she gently pulled his coat away from the thick shaft in an effort to...
Battery low. Battery 10%.
They had stopped coming now, yet there were faces missing. Kenleahan, Billy Aldai, Kevin Marlin. He made himself name the missing, made himself count them. 27. 27 not there. Did you bring all the wounded? He asked dully. Is anybody left out there? Fail's hand trembled on his side. Her expression as she frowned at his wound was a blend of worry and fury. She had a right to be angry. He should never have gotten her into this. Only the dead, Van Alstyne said, and a voice as leaden as his face. Will looked to be frowning at something outside. I saw Kenley, he said. His head was in the crook of an oak, but the rest of him was down at the foot. I saw him. His cold won't bother him now. He sneezed and looked startled. Perrin sighed heavily and wished he had not. Pain shooting up his side clenched his teeth. Fail, the green and gold silk scarf wadded in her hand, was trying to pull his shirt out of his breeches. He pushed her hands away despite her scowl. There was no time for tending wounds now. Wounded on the horses, he said when he could speak. I won't. Will they attack us? The forest seemed too still. The warder appeared, leading a dark gray gelding with a fierce eye. Perrin repeated his question. Perhaps. Perhaps not. On their own, Trollocs kill whomever is easiest. Without a halfman, they would probably rather find a farm than someone who might put arrows in them. Make sure everyone who can stand upright carries a bow with an arrow nocked, even if they cannot draw it. They may decide the price is too high for the fun. Perrin shivered. If the Trollocs did attack, they would have as much fun as a dance at Sunday. Ivan and the Aiel were the only ones really ready to fight back. And Fail. Her dark eyes shone with fury. He had to get her to safety. The warder did not offer his own horse for the wounded, which made sense. The animal was not likely to let anyone else on its back. A war-trained horse with its master in the saddle would be a formidable weapon if the Trollocs came again. Perrin tried to put Fail up on Swallow, but she stopped him. The wounded, you said, she told him softly. Remember? To his disgust, she insisted he ride Stepper. He expected the others to protest after he had brought them to disaster, but no one did. There were just enough horses for those who could not walk and those unable to walk far. Grudgingly, he admitted that he was one of the latter. So he ended up in his saddle. Half the other riders had to cling to theirs. He sat upright, gritting his teeth to do it. Those who walked or stumbled, and some who rode, clutched their bows as if they meant salvation. Perrin carried one too, and so did Fail, though he doubted she could even draw a Two Rivers longbow. It was appearance that counted now, illusion that might see them safe. Like Ivan, alert as a coiled whip, the three Aiel looked unchanged as they glided ahead, spears stuck through the harness of the bow cases on their backs, horn bows in hand and ready. The rest, including himself, were a rag-bag remnant, nothing like the band he had led here, so confident and full of his own pride. Yet illusion worked as well as reality. For the first mile through the tangle, vagrant breezes brought in Trolloc stink, the scent of Trollocs shadowing, stalking. Then the stench slowly faded and vanished as the Trollocs fell behind, diluted by a mirage. Fail walked beside Stepper, one hand on Perrin's leg, as though she meant to hold him up. Now and then she looked up at him, smiling encouragingly, but with worry creasing her forehead. He smiled back as best he could, trying to make her think he was all right. 27. He could not stop the names from running through his head. Kali Garin, Jared Adair, Dale Altarin, and Ren Chandon. 27 Two Rivers folk he had killed with his stupidity. 27. They took the most direct route back out of the waterwood, breaking clear sometime in the afternoon. It was hard to tell exactly how late, with the sky still blanketed in gray and everything blandly shadowed. High grass pasture, dotted with trees, stretched in front of them, and some scattered sheep and a few farmhouses in the distance. No smoke rose from any of the chimneys. If there was anyone in those houses, something hot would have been cooking in the fireplace. The nearest rising smoke plume looked 5 miles off at least. We should find a farm for the night, I both said. Some place under cover in case it rains again. Fire. Food. He looked at the two Rivers men and added, water and bandages. Farron only nodded. The water was better than he at knowing the right thing to do. Old Billy Conger, with his head full of ale, was probably better. He just let Stepper follow Ivan's Gray. Before they had gone much beyond a mile, a faint thread of music caught Perrin's ear. Fiddles and flutes playing merry tunes. At first he thought he was dreaming, but then the others heard too, exchanging incredulous looks, then relieved grins. Music meant people, and happy people by the sound, someone celebrating. That anyone might have something to celebrate was enough to pick their feet up somewhat. Chapter 41. Among the Tuathawan. A gathering of wagons came in sight, a little off to the south, like small houses on wheels. Tall wooden boxes, painted and lacquered in violent shades of red and blue, green and yellow, all standing in a large, rough circle around a few broad-limbed oak trees. The music came from there. Perrin had heard there were tinkers, traveling people in the two rivers, but he had not seen them until now. Hobbled horses cropped the long grass nearby. I will sleep elsewhere, Paul said stiffly when he saw Perrin meant to go to the wagons, and loped away without another word. Bain and Chiad spoke softly yet urgently to Fail. Perrin caught enough to know they were trying to convince her to spend the night with them in some snug thicket, and not with the lost ones. They sounded appalled at the idea of speaking to the Tinkers, much less eating or sleeping with them. Fail's hand tightened on his leg as she refused, quietly, firmly. The two maidens frowned at each other, blue eyes meeting gray, with a deep measure of concern. But before the traveling people's wagons came much closer, they trotted away after Paul. They seemed to have recovered some of their spirits, though. Perrin heard Chiad suggesting they induce Gull to play some game called Maiden's Kiss. They were both laughing as they passed out of his earshot. Men and women were working in the camp, sewing, mending harness, cooking, washing clothes and children, levering a wagon up to replace a wheel. Other children ran playing, or danced to the tunes of half a dozen men playing fiddle or flute. From oldest to youngest, the Tinkers wore clothes even more colorful than their wagons, in eye-wrenching combinations that had to have been chosen blindly. No sane man would have worn anything near those hues, and not many women. As the ragtag party approached the wagons, silence fell, people stopping where they were to watch with worried expressions, women clutching infants and children, running to hide behind adults, peering around a leg or hiding their faces in skirts. A one-hairy man, gray-haired and short, stepped forward and bowed gravely, both hands touching his chest. He wore a bright blue high-collared coat and baggy trousers of a green that almost seemed to glow, tucked into knee boots. You are welcome to our fires. Do you know the song? For a moment, trying not to hunch around the arrow on him, Perrin could only stare. He knew this man, the Mahdi, or seeker of this band. What chance, he wondered. All the Tinkers in the world, what chance? It should be folk I know. Coincidences made him uneasy. When the pattern produced coincidence, the wheels seemed to be forcing events. And beginning to sound like a bloody Aes Sedai. He could not manage the bow, but he remembered the ritual. Your welcome warms my spirit, Ring, as your fires warm the flesh. But I do not know the song. Fail and Ivan gave him startled looks, but no more than did the Two Rivers men. Judging by the mutters he heard from Van and Tell and others, he had just given them something else to talk about. Then we seek still, the wiry man intoned. As it was, so shall it be, if we but remember, seek, and find. Grimacing, he surveyed the bloody faces confronting him, his eyes flinching away from weapons. The traveling people would not touch anything they considered a weapon. You are welcome to our fires. There will be hot water and bandages and poultices. You know my name, he added, looking at Perrin searchingly. Of course. Your eyes. Rain's wife had come to his side as he spoke, a plump woman, gray-haired but smooth-cheeked, a head taller than her husband. Her red blouse and bright yellow skirt and green-fringed shawl jarred the eye.
Hell yeah, Babylon, it sounds good.
Perrin Ibarra, she said. I thought I knew your face. Is Elias with you? Perrin shook his head. I have not seen him in a long time, Anna. He leads a life of violence, Rain said sadly. As you do. A violent life is stained, even if long. Do not try to bring him to the way the leaf standing here, Rain, Ella said briskly, but not unkindly. He is hurt. They all are. Now, what am I thinking? Rain muttered. Raising his voice, he called, Come, people! Come and help! They are hurt! Come and help! Men and women gathered quickly. They helped injured men down from their horses, guiding men toward their wagons, carrying them when necessary. Will and a few of the others were concerned over being separated, but Perrin.
I'm smoking these, but I'm going to be smoking on a roach weed joint here in a sec.
They would not raise a hand against anyone, even to defend their own lives. Perrin found he had to accept.
I got a roach weed joint.
Climbing down sent jolts of pain radiating out from his side. Rain, he said, a touch breathless. You shouldn't be out here. We fought Trollocs not 5 miles from this spot. Take your people to Emmons Field. They will be safe there. Rain hesitated, surprised at it, before shaking his head. Even if I wished to, people would not want it, Perrin. We try not to camp very close to even the smallest village. And not only because the villagers may falsely accuse us of stealing whatever they have lost, or of trying to convince their children to find the way. Where men have built 10 houses together, there is the potential for violence. Since the breaking, the Tuathawan have known this. Safety lies in our wagons, and in always moving, always seeking the song. A plaintive expression came over his face. Everywhere we hear news of violence, Perrin, not just here in your Two Rivers. There is a feel in the world of change, of destruction. Surely we must find the song soon, else I do not believe it will ever be. You will find the song, Perrin said quietly. Maybe they have poured violence too much for a Taviran to overcome. Maybe even a Taviran could not fight the way of the leaf. It had seemed attractive to him once, too. I truly hope that you will. What will be, Rain said. All things die in their time, perhaps even the song. I looked with a comforting arm around her husband, though her eyes were as troubled as his. Come, she said. Please, we must be doing something. Men will talk at their cursor.
No, they're just a second generation right now.
I never see him but in the company of beautiful girls. Fail gave Perrin a flat, considering look, then tried to gloss it over quickly. He made it as far as Rain's wagon, yellow trimmed in red, with red and yellow spokes and tall red-rimmed wheels, and red and yellow trunks lashed to the outside, standing beside a cook fire in the middle of the camp. But when he put his foot on the first of the wooden steps at the back, his knees gave way. Ivan and Rain more than half carried him inside, followed hurriedly by Fail and Isla, and laid him on the bed built into the front of the wagon, with just room to get by to the sliding door leading to the driver's seat. It truly was like a little house, even to pale pink curtains and 2 small windows on either side. He lay there staring at the ceiling. Here, too, the tinkers made use of their colors. The ceiling was lacquered sky blue, the high cabinets green and yellow. Fail unfastened his belt and took away his axe and quiver, while Isla rummaged in one of the cabinets. Baron could not seem to rouse any interest in what they were doing. Anyone can be surprised, Ivan said. Learn from it, but do not take it too much to heart. Not even Arthur Hawkwing won every battle. Arthur Hawkwing. Baron tried to laugh, but it turned into a groan. Yes, he managed. I am certainly not Arthur Hawkwing, am I? Isla frowned at the warder, or at his sword, rather. She seemed to find that even worse than Perrin's axe, and came to the bed with a wad of folded bandages. Once she had pulled Perrin's shirt away from the arrow stub, she winced. I do not think I am competent to remove this. It is bedded deep. Barbed, Ivan said in a conversational tone. Trollocs do not use bows very often, but when they do, the arrows are barbed. Out, the plump woman said firmly, rounding on him. And you as well, Rain. Tending the sick is no business of men. Why don't you go see if Moshe has that wheel on his wagon yet? A good idea, Rain said. We may want to move tomorrow. There has been hard traveling this last year, he confided to Perrin. All the way to Kyrian, then back again to Giladon, then up into Andor. Tomorrow, I think. When the red door shut behind him and Ivan, Isla turned to Fail worriedly. If it is barbed, I do not think I can remove it at all. I will try if I must. But if there is anyone nearby who knows more of such things... There is someone in Emmons Field, Fail assured her. But is it safe to leave it in him until tomorrow? Safer than me cutting, perhaps. I can mix something for him to drink for the pain, and blend a poultice against infection. Glaring at the 2 women, Perrin said, Hello. You remember me? I am right here. Stop trying to talk over my head. They looked at him for a moment. Keep him still, I let you. It is all right to let him talk, but do not allow him to move about. He may injure himself more. I will see to it, Fail replied. Perrin gritted his teeth and did his best to help in getting his coat and shirt off, but they had to do most of the work. He felt as weak as the worst wrought iron, ready to bend to any pressure. 4 inches of thumb-thick arrow stuck out almost atop his last rib, rising from a puckered gash thick with dried blood. They pushed his head down his throat, for some reason not wanting him to look at it. They washed the wound while Isla held the staff with stone, mortar, and pestle. Plain, smooth gray stone, the first things he had seen in the Tinker camp that were not brightly colored. They mounted the staff around the arrow and wrapped him with bandages to hold it. Rain and I will sleep beneath the wagon tonight, the Chihuahua woman said at last, wiping her hands. Frowning at the arrow stub sticking up from his bandages, she shook her head. Once I thought he might eventually find the way of relief. He was a gentle boy, I think. The way is not for everyone, Fail said gently. But Isla shook her head again. It is for everyone, she replied, just as gently, and a touch. She left then, and Fail sat on the edge of the bed, blotting his face with a folded cloth. He seemed to be sweating a great deal for some reason. I blundered, he said after a time. No, that is too soft. I don't know the right word. You did not blunder, she said. You did what seemed fitting at the time. It was fitting. I cannot imagine how they could. Gaul is not one to make a mistake about where his enemies are. Ivan was right, Perrin. Anyone can find circumstances that have changed when he did not know. You held everyone together. You brought us out. He shook his head hard and made his side hurt worse. Ivan brought us out. What I did was get 27 men killed, he said bitterly, trying to sit up to face her. Some of them were my friends, Fail, and I got them killed. Fail threw her weight on his shoulders to push him back down. It was a measure of his weakness how easily she held him. There will be time enough for that in the morning, she said firmly, peering down into his face. And we have to put you back on your horse. Ivan did not bring us out. I do not think he cared particularly if anyone but you and he did get out. Those men would have scattered in every direction if not for you, and then we'd all have been hunted down. They would not have held together for Ivan, a stranger. As for your friends, sighing, she sat back down again. Aaron, my father says a general can take care of the living or weep for the dead, but he cannot do both. I am a fool of a blacksmith who thought he could use other people to help him get justice, or maybe revenge. I still want it, but I don't want to use anyone else for it any longer. Do you think the thoughts will go away because your motives are not pure enough? The heat in her voice made him pushed it back to the pillow almost roughly. Are they any less vile? Do you need a purer reason to fight them than what they are? Another thing my father says. The worst sin a general can commit, worse than blundering, worse than losing, worse than anything, is to desert the men who depend on him. A tapped him, slender, handsome tinker, in a striped coat, put his head in. He flashed a smile at Fail, all white teeth and oozing charm, before looking at Perrin. Grandfather said it was you. I thought this was where Egwene said she came from. He frowned suddenly, disapprovingly. Your eyes. I see you have followed Elias after all, to run with the wolves. I was sure you would never find the way of the leaf. Perrin knew him. Aram, Rain and Isla's grandson. He did not like him. He smiled like Will. Go away, Aram. I'm tired. Is Egwene with you? Egwene's Aes Sedai now, Aram, he growled. And she would rip your heart out with the one power if you asked her to dance. Go away. Aram blinked and hastily shut the door, with himself outside. Perrin let its head fall back. He smiles too much, he muttered. I cannot abide a man who smiles too much. Fail made a choking noise, and he looked at her suspiciously. She was biting her underlip. I have something in my throat, she said in a strangled voice, getting up hastily. She hurried to the wide shelf below the foot of the bed where Isla had prepared her poultice and stood with her back to him, pouring water from a green and red pitcher into a blue and yellow mug. Would you like something to drink, too? Isla left this powder for the pain. It will help you sleep. I don't want any powder, he said. Fail, who is your father? Her back went very stiff. After a moment, she turned with the mug in both hands and an unreadable look in her tilted eyes. Another minute passed before she said, My father is Davram of House Bashir, Lord of Bashir, Tyr, and Sedona, guardian of the Blight Border, defender of the Heartland, Marshal General to Queen Tenobia of Saldania, and her uncle. Blight? What was all that about him being a wood merchant or a fur dealer? I seem to remember him dealing in ice peppers once, too. It was not a lie, she said sharply. Then in a weaker voice, just not the whole truth. My father's estates do produce lumber and fine woods, and ice peppers and furs and more besides. And his stewards sell them for him, so he does trade in them. In a way. Why couldn't you just tell me? Hiding things, lying. You're a lady. He frowned at her accusingly. He had not expected this. A small merchant for a father, a former soldier maybe, but not this. Light, what are you doing running around as a hunter of the horn? Don't tell me the Lord of Bashir and all that just sent you off to find adventure. Still holding the cup, she came back to sit beside him. For some reason, she seemed very intent on his face. My 2 older brothers died, Baron. One fighting Trollocs, the other in a fall from his horse hunting. That made me the eldest. And it meant I had to study account books and trading. While my younger brothers learned to be soldiers, while they were being ready for adventures, I had to learn how to manage the estates. It is the eldest's duty. It is dull, drying, and boring. Buried in paper and clerks. When Father took Maiden with him to the Blight Quarter, he's 2 years younger than I, that was more than I could stand. Girls are not taught the sword or war in Sardinia. But Father had named an old soldier from his first command as my footman. And Aaron was always more than happy to teach me to use knives and fight with my hands. I think it amused him. In any case, when Father took Maiden with him, the news had arrived calling the great hunt of the horn. So I left. I wrote Mother a letter explaining, and I left. And I reached Ilion in time to take the oath of a hunter. Picking up the claw, she patted at the sweat on his face again. You really should sleep if you can. I suppose you are the Lady Bashir or some such, he said. How did you ever come to like a common blacksmith? The word is love, Perenibara. The firmness of her voice was at sharp odds with the gentle way that the cloth moved on his face. And you are not such a common blacksmith, I think. The cloth paused. Aaron, what did that fellow mean about running with wolves? Rain mentioned this Elias too. For a moment he was frozen, unbreathing. Yet he had just berated her for keeping secrets from him. It was what he got for being hasty and angry. Swing a hammer in haste, and you usually hit your own thumb. He exhaled slowly and told her how he had met Elias Machira and learned he could talk to wolves. How his eyes had changed color, grown sharper, and his hearing and his sense of smell like a wolf's. About the wolf dream, about what would happen to him if he ever lost his hold on humanity. It's so easy. Sometimes, especially in a dream, I forget I'm a man, not a wolf. If one of these times I don't remember quickly enough, if I lose hold, I'll be a wolf. In my head, at least. A sort of half-wrong image of a wolf. There won't be anything of me left. He stopped, waiting for her to flinch and move away. If your ears are really that sharp, she said calmly, I will have to watch what I say close to you. He caught her hand to stop her patting. Did you hear anything I said? What will your father and mother think by you? A half-wolf blacksmith. You're a lady, light. I heard every word. Father will approve. He has always said our family blood is growing too soft. Not like it was in the old days. I know he thinks I am terribly soft. She gave him a smile, fierce enough for any wolf. Of course, Mother always wanted me to marry a king who splits Trollocs in two with one stroke of his sword. I suppose your axe will suffice, but could you tell her you are the king of the wolves? I don't think anyone will come forward to dispute your claim to that throne. In truth, the splitting of Trollocs will probably do for Mother, but I truly think she would like the other. Right, he said hoarsely. She sounded almost serious. No, she did sound serious. If she was even half serious, He was not sure the Trollocs might not be better than meeting her parents. "Here," she said, holding the mug of water to his lips. "You sound as though your throat is dry." Swallowing, he spluttered at the bitter taste. She had stirred in eyeless powder. He tried to stop, but she filled his mouth, and it was a matter of swallow or choke. By the time he could push the mug away, she had emptied half of it into him. Why did medicine always taste so vile? He suspected women did it on purpose. He would have bet that whatever they took for themselves did not taste that way. "I told you I did not want any of that." Gah! "Did you? I must not have heard. But whether you did or not, you need sleep." She stroked his hair. "Sleep, my parent." He tried to tell her he had indeed told her so, and she had heard it. But the words seemed to tangle around his tongue. His eyes wanted to slide shut. In fact, he could not keep them open. The last thing he heard was her soft murmurs. "Sleep, my lovely. Sleep." Chapter 42. A Missing Leaf. Perrin stood near the Tuathuan wagons in the bright sunlight, alone, and there was no arrow in his side, no pain. Among the wagons, firewood was stacked, ready to be lit beneath iron cookpots, hanging from tripods, and clothes hung from wash lines. There were no people or horses. He wore neither coat nor shirt, but a blacksmith's long leather vest that left his arms bare. It could have been any dream, perhaps, except that he was aware it was a dream. And he knew the feel of the wolf dream, the reality and solidity of it. From the long grass around his boots, to the breeze out of the west that ruffled his curly hair, to the scattered ash and hemlock. The tinker's gaudy wagons did not seem real, though. They had an air of insubstantiability, a feel that they might shimmer and be gone any moment. They never remained long in one place, tinkers. No soil held them. Wondering how much the land held him, he rested a hand on his axe, looked down in surprise. The heavy blacksmith's hammer hung in the loop on his belt, not the axe. He frowned. Once he would have chosen that way, had even thought of that, but surely no more. The axe. He had chosen the axe. Hammerhead suddenly became half moon blade and thick spike, flickered back to stout cylinder of cold steel, fluttered between. Finally it stopped, as his axe, and he exhaled slowly. That had never happened. Here he could change things as he wanted to, things about himself at least. "And I want the axe," he said firmly. "The axe." Looking around, he could just see a farmhouse and deer browsing the barley field, surrounded by a rough stone wall. There was no feel of wolf, and he did not call Hopper. The wolf might or might not come, or even hear, but Slayer could well be out there somewhere. A bristling quiver abruptly tugged at his belt opposite the axe, and he had a stout longbow in his hand with a broadhead arrow nocked. A long leather bracer covered his left forearm. Nothing moved except those deer. "Not likely I'll wake soon," he muttered to himself. Whatever that stuff was that Fail had fed him, it had taken him right off. He remembered it as clearly as if he had watched over her shoulder. "Fed it to me like I was a babe," he growled. "Women." He took one of those long strides, the land blurred around him, and stepped into the farmyard. 2 or 3 chickens scattered, running as if they had already gone feral. The rock-walled sheepfold stood empty, and both thatched-roof barns were barred shut. Despite curtains still at the windows, the 2-story farmhouse had the look of emptiness. If this was a true reflection of the waking world, the wolf dream usually was, in an odd way, the people here had been gone for days. Fail was right. His warning had spread beyond the places he had gone. Fail, he remembered wonderingly. Daughter of a lord. No, not just a lord. 3 times a lord, a general, and uncle to a queen. Light, that makes her a queen's cousin. And she loved a simple blacksmith. Women were wondrous strange. Seeking to see how far the word had spread, he zigzagged more than halfway to Devon Ride, a mile or so at a stride, doubling back and crisscrossing his own path. Most farms he saw had that same emptiness. Less than 1 in 5 showed signs of habitation, doors open and windows up, wash hung out on a line, dolls or hoops or carved wooden horses on the doorstep. The toys especially made his stomach clench. Even if they had not believed his warning, surely there were enough burned farms about to tell them the same. Tumbled heaps of charred timbers, soot-black chimneys like stark dead fingers. Bending to replace a doll with a smiling glass face and a flower-embroidered dress, some woman had loved her daughter to do all that tiny needlework. He blinked. The same doll still sat on the fieldstone steps where he had picked it up. As he reached out, the one in his hand faded and vanished. Flashes black in the sky cut short his amazement. 20 or 30 together, winging toward the west, toward the mountains of mist, where he had first seen Slayer. He watched coldly.
Don't draw back about roaches that they're little rough.
Then he set off after him. Long racing strides carried him 5 miles each, a land of blur except in the moment between one step and the next, into the thick-treed, rocky westwood, across the scrub-covered sandhills, into the cloud-capped mountains, where fir and pine and leather-leaf forested valleys and slopes. To the very valley, where he had seen the man Hopper called Slayer, to the mountainside, where he had returned from Tyr. The waygate stood there, closed. The Avendasora leaf seemingly just one among a myriad of intricately carved leaves and vines. Scattered trees, wizened and wind-sculpted, dotted the sparse soil along the glazed stone, where Manetheren had been burned away. Sunlight sparkled on the waters of the Manetheren brow below. A faint wind up the valley brought in the scent of deer, rabbits, foxes. Nothing moved that he could see. On the point of leaving, he stopped. The Avendasora. One leaf. Loyal had locked the waygate by placing both leaves on this side. He turned, and his hackles rose. The waygate stood open, twin masses of living greenery stirring in the breeze, exposing that dull, silvery surface. His reflection shimmered in it. How? He wondered. Loyal locked the bloody thing. Unaware of crossing the distance, suddenly he was right at the waygate. There was no trefoil leaf among the verdant tangle on the inside of the 2 gates. Strange to think that at that moment in the waking world, someone or something was passing through where he stood. Touching the dull surface, he grunted. It might as well have been a mirror. His hand slid across it as across the smoothest glass. From the corner of his eye, he caught the Avendasora leaf suddenly in its place on the inside, and leaped back just as the waygate began swinging shut. Someone or something had come out or gone in. Out. It has to be out. He wanted to doubt that it was more Trollocs and Fades coming into the 2 rivers. The gates merged, became stone carvings again. A sense of being watched was all the warning he had. He jumped, a half-seen image of black streaking through where his chest had been, an arrow. Jumped in one of those world-blurring stretches, landed on a far slope, and jumped again, out of the valley of Manetheren into a stand of towering fir, and again. Running, he thought furiously, picturing the valley in his mind, that brief glimpse of the arrow. It had come from that direction, at that angle when it reached him. So it had to have come from... The final bound took him back onto a slope above Manetheren's grave, crouching among meager, wind-slanted pines, with bow ready to draw. Below him, among the stunted trees and boulders, had been fired. Slayer had to be down there somewhere. He had to be down. Without thinking, Perrin leaped away. The mountains a smear of gray and brown and green. Almost, he growled. Almost, he had duplicated his mistake in the waterwood, thinking again an enemy would move to suit him, wait where he wanted. This time he ran as hard as he could, only 3 flashing strides to the edge of the sandhills, hoping he had not been seen. This time he circled wide, coming back higher on that same mountainside, up where the air felt thin and cold and a few trees with thick-trunked bushes 50 paces or more apart. Up above where a man might set himself to watch for another who meant to sneak up on the place that arrow had fired. And there his quarry was, 100 paces below, dark-haired and dark-coated, a tall man crouched beside a table-sized granite outcrop, his own half-drawn bow in hand, studying the slope farther down with eager patience. This was the first time Perrin had gotten a good look at him. 100 paces was little distance for his eyes. This slayer's high-collared coat had a borderland cut, and his face looked enough like Lan's to be the warder's brother's. Only Lan had no brothers, no living kin at all that Perrin knew, and if he had had any, they would not have been here. A borderlander, though, maybe Shinar, though his hair was long, not shaved to a top knot, and was held back by a braided leather cord just like Lan's. He could not be Melkiri. Lan was the last living Melkiri. Wherever he came from, Perrin felt no compunction at all in drawing his bow, broadhead point aimed at Slayer's back. This man had tried to kill him from ambush. Downhill shot could be tricky. Perhaps he had taken too long, or perhaps the fellow felt his cold gaze, but suddenly Slayer became a blur, streaking away east. With a curse, Perrin pursued. 3 strides to the sandhills, another into the westward. Among the oaks and leatherleaf and underbrush, Slayer seemed to vanish. Halting, Perrin listened. Silence. The squirrels and birds had gone still. He inhaled deeply. A small herd of deer had passed that way not long since, and a faint tinge of something, human but too cold for a man, too emotionless, scent that tickled his mind with familiarity. Slayer was somewhere close. The air lay as still as the forest, no stir of breeze to tell him which way that scent came. A neat trick, Golden Eyes, locking the way gate. Perrin tensed, ears straining. No telling from where in this dense growth that voice had come. Not so much as a leaf rustled. If you knew how many of the shadow wrought died trying to get out of the ways there, it would lift your heart. Machin Kin feasted in that gate, Golden Eyes. But not a good enough trick. You saw. The gate is open now. There, off to the right. Perrin slipped through the trees as silently as he had when he had hunted here. It was only a few hundred to begin, Golden Eyes. Just enough to keep those fool whitecloaks off balance and see that the renegade died. Slayer's voice became angry. The shadow consume me if that man does not have more luck than the White Tower. Abruptly he chuckled. With you, Golden Eyes, your presence was a surprise. There are those who want your head on a pike. Your precious 2 rivers will be harrowed from end to end now to root you out. What do you say to that, Golden Eyes? Perrin froze close beside the gnarled trunk of a great oak. Why was the man talking so much? Why was he talking at all? He's drawing me right to him. Putting his back against the oak's thick bole, he studied the forest. No movement. Slayer wanted him to come nearer, no doubt into an ambush, and he wanted to find the man and rip his throat out. Yet it could easily be himself who died. If that happened, no one would know the waygate was open, and Trollocs coming by hundreds, maybe even thousands. He would not play Slayer's game. With a mirthless smile, he stepped out of the wolf tree, telling himself to wake, and Rael twined her arms around his neck and nipped his beard with small white teeth, while Tinker's fiddles sang some wild, heated tune around the campfires. Eyeless powder. I can't wake up. Awareness that it was a dream faded. Laughing, he scooped Fail up in his arms and carried her into the shadows where the grass was soft. Waking was a slow process, wrapped around the dull pain filling his side. Daylight streamed in at the small windows. Bright light. Morning. He tried to sit up and fell back with a groan. Fail sprang up from a low stool. Her dark eyes looked as if she had not slept. Lie still, she said. You did enough thrashing in your sleep. I have not kept you from rolling over and driving that thing the rest of the way through you. Just to watch you do it now you're awake. My bond stood leaning against the doorframe, like a dark blade. Help me up, Perrin said. Talking hurt, but so did breathing, and he had to talk. I have to get to the mountain, to the way gate. She put a hand to his forehead, frowning. She murmured. Then more strongly, you are going to Emmons Field, where one of the Aes Sedai can heal you. You are not going to kill yourself trying to ride into the mountains with an arrow in you. Do you hear me? If I hear one more word about mountains or waygates, I will have Isla mix something that will put you back to sleep, and you will travel on a litter. I am not certain you should not anyway. The Trollocs, Fail. The waygate is open again. I have to stop them. The woman did not even hesitate before shaking her head. You can do nothing about it, the state you are in. It is Emmons Field for you. But be no buts, Perrin Avar. Not another word on it. He ground his teeth. The worst was that she was right. If he could not rise from a bed alone, how could he stay in the saddle as far as Manetheren? Emmons Field, he said graciously, but she still sniffed and muttered something about pig-headed. What did she want? I was bloody gracious. Burn her for stubborn. So there will be more Trollocs, Ivan said musingly. He did not ask how Perrin knew. Then he shook his head as if dismissing Trollocs. I will tell the others you are awake. He slipped out, closing the door behind him. Am I the only one who sees the danger? Perrin muttered. I see an arrow in you, Fail said firmly. The reminder gave him a twinge. He just stifled a groan. And she gave a satisfied nod. Satisfied. He wanted to be up and on the way immediately. The sooner he was healed, the sooner he could see to closing the waygate again. Permanently this time. Fail insisted on feeding him breakfast, a broth thick with mashed vegetables, suitable for a toothless infant, 1 spoon at a time, with pauses to wipe his chin. She would not let him feed himself, and whenever he protested or asked her to go faster, she shoved the words back into his mouth with a spoonful of pap. She would not even let him wash his own face. By the time she got around to brushing his hair and combing his beard, he had settled on dignified silence. You look pretty when you sulk, she said, and pinched his nose. Isla, in green blouse and blue skirt this morning, climbed into the wagon with his coat and shirt, both cleaned and mended. To his irritation, he had to let the 2 women help him don them. He had to let them help him sit up to don them. The coat unbuttoned and the shirt not tucked in, but bunched around the arrow stub. Thank you, Isla, he said, fingering the neat darns. This is fine needlework. It is, she agreed. Fail has a deft touch with a needle. Fail colored, and he grinned, thinking how fiercely she had told him she would never mend his clothes. A glint in her eye held his tongue. Sometimes silence was the wiser course. Thank you, Fail, he said gravely instead. She blushed even redder. Once they had him on his feet, he reached the door easily enough, but he had to let the 2 women half support him to climb down the wooden steps. At least the horses were saddled, and all the 2 Rivers lads gathered, bows slung on their backs. With clean faces and clothes, and only a few bandages outwardly showed. The night with the Tuathuan had obviously been good for their spirits, too, even those who still looked as though they could not walk 100 paces. The haggardness that had been in their eyes yesterday was only a shadow now. Will had each arm around a pretty big-eyed tinker girl, of course, and Van Leeuwen, with his nose and a bandage around his head, making his dark hair stand up in a brush, held hands with another, smiling shyly. Most of the others held bowls of thick vegetable stew and spoons, shoveling away. "This is good, Baron," Daniel said, giving up his empty bowl to a tinker woman. She gestured as if to ask the beanpole fellow whether he wanted more, and he shook his head, but said, "I don't think I could ever get enough of it, do you?" "I had my fill," Baron told him sourly. "Mashed vegetables and broth." "The tinker girls danced last night," Daniel's cousin Tell said, wide-eyed. "All the unmarried women, and some of them married. You should have seen it, Baron." "I've seen tinker women dance before, too." Apparently, he had not kept his voice clear of what he had felt watching them. For Fail said dryly, "You've seen the Taganza, have you? Someday, if you are good, I may dance the Sassara for you, and show you what a dance really is." Isla gasped in recognition of the name, and Fail was even wetter than she had inside. Baron pursed his lips. If this Sassara set the heart pounding any harder than the tinker women's swaying, hip-rolling dance, the Taganza, was it? He definitely would like to see Fail dance it. He carefully did not look at her. Rain came, in the same bright green coat, but trousers redder than any red Perrin had ever seen before. The combination made his head ache. "Twice you have visited our fires, Perrin, and for the second time you go without a farewell feast. You must come again soon so we can make up for it." Pushing away from Fail and Isla, he could stand by himself at least. He put a hand on the wiry man's shoulder. "Come with us, Rain. No one in Emmonsfield will harm you. At worst, it's safer than out here with the Trollocs." Rain hesitated, then shook himself, muttering, "I do not know how you can even make me consider such things." Turning, he spoke loudly. "People, Baron has asked us to come with him to his village, where we will be safe from Trollocs. Who wishes to go?" Shocked faces stared back at him. Some women gathered their children close, and the children hid in their skirts as if the very idea frightened them. "You see, Baron," Rain said, "for us, safety lies in moving, not in villages. I assure you, we do not spend 2 nights in one place, and we will travel all day before stopping again." "That may not be enough, Rain." The Mahdi shrugged. "Your concern warms me, but we will be safe if the light wins it. The way of the Leaf is not only to do no violence," Isla said gently, "but to accept what comes. The leaf falls in its proper time uncomplaining. The light will keep us safe for our time." Perrin wanted to argue with them, but behind all the warmth and compassion on their faces lay a stony firmness. He thought he would get Vane and Chia to don dresses and give up their spears, or Gaul too, before he made these people budge an inch. Rain shook Perrin's hand, and with that the tinker women began hugging the 2 Rivers lads, and Ivan too. And the tinker men began shaking hands, all laughing and saying goodbyes and wishing everyone a safe journey, hoping they would come again. Almost all the men did. Aram stood up to one side, frowning to himself, hands thrust into his coat pockets. The last time Perrin met him, he had seemed to have a sour streak. Odd for a tinker. The men did not content themselves with shaking Fail's hand, but hugged him. Perrin kept his face smooth when some of the younger men became overly enthusiastic. Only grinding his teeth a little, he managed to smile. No woman much younger than Isla hugged him. Somehow, even while Fail was letting some skinny, gaudy-coated tinker fold his arms around her and try to squeeze her flat, she stood guard on him like a mastiff. Women without gray in their hair took one look at her face and chose someone else. Meanwhile, Will appeared to be kissing every woman in the camp. So was Ban, and his nose. Even Ivan was enjoying himself, for that matter. He would serve Fail right if one of those fellows cracked a rib for her. Finally, Finally, the Tinkers moved back, except for Rain and Isla, opening a space around the two rivers folk. The wiry, gray-haired man bowed formally, hands to chest. You came in peace. Depart now in peace. Always will our fires welcome you. The way of the leaf is peace. Peace be on you always, Perrin replied, and on all the people. Life be it so. I will find the song, or another will find the song, but the song will be sung this year or in a year to come. He wondered if there had ever been a song, or if the Tuathalan had begun their endless journey seeking something else. Elias had
be right back.
What song, only that they would know it when they found it. Let them find safety, at least that. As it once was, so shall it be again. World without end. World without end, the Tuathalan responded in a solemn ring. World and time without end. A few final hugs and handshakes were handed round, while Yvonne and Fail were helping Perrin up on Stepper. A few last kisses collected by Will, and Van, and his nose. Others, the badly wounded, were half lifted onto their horses, with Tinkers waving as if to old neighbors off on a long journey. Rain came to shake Perrin's hand. Will you not reconsider? Perrin asked. I remember hearing you say once there was wickedness loose in the world. It's worse now, Rain. And here. Peace be on you, Perrin, Rain replied, smiling. And on you, he said sadly. The Aiel did not appear until they were a mile north of the Tinker camp, Bane and Chia looking to Fail before trotting ahead to their usual place. Perrin was not sure what they thought might have happened to her among Tuathalan. Gaul moved in beside Stepper, striding easily. The party was not moving very fast, with nearly half of them walking. He glanced at Ivan measuringly, as usual, before turning to Perrin. Your injury is well? His injury hurt like fury. Every step his horse took jolted that arrowhead. I feel fine, he said, not gritting his teeth. Maybe we'll have a dance in Emmons Field tonight. And you? Did you pass a good night playing Maiden's Kiss? Gaul stumbled and nearly fell on his face. What is the matter? Who did you hear suggest this game? The Aielman said quietly, staring straight ahead. Chiad. Why? Chiad, Gaul muttered. The woman is Goshin. Goshin. I should take her back to Hot Springs as Guy Shine. The words sounded angry, but not his odd tone. Chiad. Will you tell me what is the matter? Myrddraal has less cunning than a woman, Gaul said in a flat voice, and a Trolloc fights with more honor. After a moment he added, in a fierce undertone, a goat has more sense. Quickening his pace, he ran forward to join the two maidens. He did not speak to them, as far as Perrin could make out, only slowed to walk alongside. Did you understand any of that? Perrin asked Ivan. The warder shook his head. Fail sniffed. If he thinks to make trouble for them, they will hang him by his heels from a branch to cool off. Did you understand it? Perrin asked her. She walked along, neither looking at him nor answering, which he took to mean she did not. I think I might have to find Rain's camp again. It's been a long time since I saw the Taganza. It was interesting. She muttered something under her breath, but he caught it. You could do with hanging by your heels yourself. He smiled down at the top of her head. But I won't have to. You promised to dance this Sasara for me. Her face went crimson. Is it anything close to the Taganza? I mean, there's no point otherwise. You muscle-brained oaf! She snapped, glaring up at him. Men have thrown their hearts and fortunes at the feet of women who dance the Sasara. Mother suspected I knew it. Her teeth clicked shut as though she had said too much, and her head whipped back to face forward. Scarlet mortification covered her, from her dark hair down to the neck of her dress. "Then there isn't any reason for you to dance it," he said quietly. "My heart and fortune, such as they are, already lie at your feet." Fael missed a step, then laughed softly and pressed her cheek against his booted calf. "You are too clever for me," she murmured. "One day I will dance it for you and boil the blood in your veins." "You already do that," he said, and she laughed again. Pushing her arm behind his stirrup, she hugged his leg to her as she walked. After a while, even the thought of Fael dancing, he extrapolated from the Tinker dance. There must be something to top that. Could not compete with the pain in his side. Every stride Stepper took was agony. He held himself upright. It seemed to hurt a fraction less that way. Besides, he did not want to spoil the lift the duathlon had given everyone's spirits. The other men were sitting up straight in their saddles too, even those who had been hunched over and clinging the day before. And Ban and Daniel and the others walked with heads up. He would not be the first to slope. Will began to whistle coming home from Tarwin's Gap, and 3 or 4 more took it up. After a time, Ban began to sing in a clear, deep voice. "My home is waiting there for me, and the girl I left behind. Of all the treasure that waits for me, that's what I want to find. Her eyes so merry, and her smile so sweet, her hugs so warm, and her ankle neat. Her kisses hot, now there's a treat. There's a treasure greater, it lies not in my mind." More joined in on the second verse, until everyone sang, even Ilona. And Fael. Not Parrot, of course. He had been told often enough that he sounded like a stepped-on frog singing. Some even fell into step with the music. "Oh, I have seen stark Tarwin's Gap and the Trollocs' raving horde. I have stood before the halfman's charge, walked on death's cold board. Where a winsome lass, she waits for me, for a dance and a kiss 'neath the apple tree." Parrot shook his head. The day before, they had been ready to run and hide. Today they sang about a battle so long ago that it had left no memory but this song in the 2 rivers. Perhaps they were becoming soldiers. They would have to, unless he managed to close that way gate. Farms began to appear more often, closer together, until they traveled along hard-packed dirt between fields bordered by hedges and low, rough stone walls. Abandoned farms. No one here clung to the land. They came to the old road, which ran north from the White River, the Matherin belt, through Devon Ride to Emmons Field, and at last began to see sheep in the pastures. Great clumps, like a dozen men's flocks gathered together, with 10 shepherds, where there once would have been 1, and half of them grown men. Full-armed shepherds watched them pass, singing at the top of their lungs, not knowing quite what to make of it. Baron did not know what to make of his first view of Emmons Field, and neither did the other 2 rivers men, from the way their singing faltered and died. The trees, fences, and hedges closest to the village were simply gone, cleared away. The westernmost houses of Emmons Field had once stood among the trees on the edge of the westwood. The oaks and leatherleaf between the houses remained, but now the forest's brim stood 500 paces away, a long bow shot, and axes rang loud as men pushed it back farther. Row on row of waist-high stakes, driven into the ground at an angle, surrounded the village, a little out from the houses, and presented a continuous hedge of sharpened points, except where the road ran in. At intervals behind the stakes, men stood like sentries, some wearing bits of old armor, or leather shirts sewn with rusty steel discs, a few indented old steel caps with boar spears, or halberds rooted out of attics, or bush hooks fitted to long poles. Other men and boys were up on some of the thatched roofs with bows. They stood when they saw Perrin and the others coming and shouted to people below. Beside the road, behind the stakes, stood a contraption of wood and thick twisted rope, with a nearby pile of stones bigger than a man's head. Ivan noticed Perrin frowning at it as they came closer. Catapult, the warder said. 6 so far. Your carpenters knew what to do once Tomas and I showed them. The stakes will hold off charging Trollocs or White Cloaks, either one. He might have been discussing the prospects for more rain. I told you your village was preparing to defend itself. Fail sounded fiercely proud, as though it were her village. A hard people for such a soft land. They could almost be Saldean. Moraine always said Manetherin's blood runs strong here still. Perrin could only shake his head. The hard-packed dirt streets were nearly crowded enough for a city. The gaps between houses filled with carts and wagons, and through open doors and unshuttered windows he could see more people. The crowd parted before Ivan and Yael, and rustling whispers accompanied them along the street. It's Perrin Goldeneyes! Perrin Goldeneyes! Perrin Goldeneyes! He wished they would not do that. These people knew him, some of them. What did they think they were doing? There was horse-faced Nisa Aelin, who had paddled his 10-year-old backside that time Matt talked him into stealing one of her gooseberry pies. And there was pink-cheeked, big-eyed Celia Cole, the first girl he had ever kissed, and still pleasingly plump. Then Pele Dare, with his pipe and his bald head, who had taught Perrin how to catch trout with his hands. And Days Conger herself, a tall, wide woman who made Alsbeth Luhan seem soft, with her husband Wit, a scrawny man overshadowed as always by his wife. And they were all staring at him and whispering to the people from off, who might not know who he was. When old Sen Bowie lifted a little boy up on his shoulder, pointing at Perrin and talking enthusiastically to the boy, Perrin groaned. They had all gone mad. Townsfolk trailed after Perrin and the others, around them, in a parade that rode a swell of murmurs. Chickens scurried every which way under people's feet. Bawling calves and pigs squealing in pens behind the houses competed with the noise of the humans. Sheep crowded the green, and black and white milk cows cropped the grass in company with flocks of geese, gray and white. And in the middle of the green rose a tall pole, the red-bordered white banner at its peak, rippling lazily, displaying a red wolf's head. He looked at Fael, but she shook her head, as surprised as he. A symbol. Perrin had not heard Baron's approach, though now he caught hushed whispers of Aes Sedai floating around her. Ivan did not look surprised. People stared at her with awe-filled eyes. People need symbols, Perrin went on, resting a hand on Stepper's shoulder. When Ilana told a few of the villagers how much Trollocs fear wolves, everyone seemed to think this banner a grand idea. Don't you, Perrin? Was there a dryness in her voice then? Her dark eyes looked up at him bird-like.
I'll be right back.
I wonder what Queen Morghese will think of that, Fael said. This is part of Andor. Queens seldom like strange banners being raised in their realms. That's nothing but lines on a map, Perrin told her. It was good to be still. The throbbing from the arrowhead seemed to have abated somewhat. I did not even know we were supposed to be part of Andor until I went to Camelin. I doubt many people here do. Rulers have a tendency to believe maps. There was no doubt of the dryness in Fael's tone. When I was a child, there were parts of Saldeia that had not seen a taxman in 5 generations. One's father could turn his attention from the Blight for a time. Zenobia made sure they knew who their queen was. This is the 2 rivers, he said, grinning, not Saldeia. They did sound very fierce up there in Saldeia. As he turned back to Varen, the grin became a frown. I thought you were hiding who you are. He could not say which was more disturbing, Aes Sedai there in secret, or Aes Sedai in the open. The Aes Sedai's hand hovered an inch from the broken-off arrow jutting from his side. Something tingled around the wound. "Oh, this is not good," she murmured. "Torch in the rib and some infection in spite of that poultice. This needs Alana, I think." She blinked and pulled her hand back. The tingle went too. "What? Hiding? Oh, with what has been stirred up here now, we could hardly remain hidden. I suppose we could have gone away. You wouldn't want that, would you?" There was that sharp, considering, bird-like stare again. He hesitated, and finally sighed. "I suppose not." "Oh, that is good to hear," she said with a smile. "Why did you really come here, Baron?" She did not seem to hear him, or did not want to. "Now, we need to see to that thing in you, and these other lads need to be looked after too. Alana and I will see to the worst, but..." The men with him were as stunned by what they found here as he was. Ban scratched his head at the banner, and a few just stared around in amazement. Most looked at Varen, though, wide-eyed and uneasy. They had surely heard the whispers of Aes Sedai. Varen was not escaping those looks entirely himself, he realized, talking to an Aes Sedai as though she were just any village woman. Varen considered them right back, then suddenly, without seeming to look, reached behind her to snatch a girl of about 10 or 12 out of the onlookers. The girl, her long dark hair caught up with blue ribbons, went rigid with shock. "You know Days Conger, girl?" Varen said. "Well, you find her and tell her there are injured men who need her wisdom's herbs. And tell her to jump. You tell her I'll have no patience with her airs. You have that? Off with you." Varen did not recognize the girl, but evidently she did know Days, because she flinched at the message. But Varen was an Aes Sedai. After a moment of weighing, Days Conger against an Aes Sedai, the girl scampered away into the crowd. "And Alana will take care of you," Varen said, peering up at him again. He wished she did not sound as though there might be two meanings to that. Chapter 43. Care for the Living. Taking Stepper's bridle, Varen led him to the wine spring in herself, the crowd melting back to let her through, then falling in after. Daniel and Ban and the others trailed along on horse and afoot, kin mingling with them now. Astounded as they were by the changes in Emmons Field, the lads still showed their pride by striding, even if they limped, or sitting up straighter in the saddle. They had faced Trollocs and come home. But women ran their hands over sons and nephews and grandsons, often biting back tears, and their low moans made a soft, pained murmur. Tight-eyed men tried to hide their worries behind proud smiles, clapping shoulders and exclaiming over newly begun beards, yet frequently their hearts just happened to turn into a shoulder to lean on. Sweethearts rushed in with kisses and loud cries, equal parts happiness and commiseration. And little brothers and sisters, uncertain, alternated between fits of weeping and clinging in wide-eyed wonder to a brother everyone seemed to be taking for a hero. It was the other voices Varen wished he could not hear. "Where is Kenley?" Mistress Hahan was a handsome woman, with streaks of white in her nearly black braid, but she wore a fear-filled frown as she scanned faces and saw eyes flinch from hers. "Where's my Kenley?" "Billy!" Old Hugh Aldai called uncertainly. "Has anyone seen Billy Aldai? Hugh, Jared, Tim, Cully!" In front of the inn, Varen fell out of the saddle in his need to escape those names, not even seeing whose hands caught him. "Get me inside," he grated. "Inside! Tevin! Harold! Ted!" The door cut off the heart-lost wails and the cries of Dale Altaran's mother for someone to tell her where her son was. In a Trolloc cookpot, Varen thought, as he was lowered into a chair in the common room. In a Trolloc's belly, where I put him, Mistress Altaran. Where I put him. Thail had his head in her hands, peering into his face worriedly. care for the living, he thought. I'll weep for the dead later. Later. I'm all right, he told her. I just got a little lightheaded dismounting. I've never been a good rider. She did not seem to believe him. Can't you do something? She demanded of Baron. The Aes Sedai calmly shook her head. I think better not, child. Pity neither of us is yellow, but Lana is still a much better healer than I. My talents lie in other directions. Ivan will bring her. Wait with patience, child. The common room had been turned into an armory of sorts. Except in front of the fireplace, the walls were a solid mass of propped spears of every description, with the occasional halberd or bill mixed in, and some pole arms with oddly shaped blades, many pitted and discolored where old rust had been scoured away. Even more surprisingly, a barrel near the foot of the stairs held swords all jumbled together, most without scabbards and no two alike. Every attic within 5 miles must have been turned out for relics dust-covered for generations. Baron would not have suspected there were 5 swords in the whole 2 rivers, before the white cloaks and trollocs came, anyway. Gaul took a place off to one side, near the stairs that led up to the inn's rooms and the Alvir's living quarters, watching Perrin but plainly aware of Varen and every move she made. On the other side of the room, watching Fail and all else, the 2 maidens cradled their spears in the crook of an elbow and took a hip-shot stance that seemed at once casual and yet balanced on the toes. The 3 young fellows who had carried Perrin in shifted their feet by the door, staring at him and the Aes Sedai and the Aiel with equally wide eyes. That was all. The others, Perrin said, they need him. They will be taken care of, Perrin interrupted smoothly, seating herself at another table. They will want to be with their families. Much better to have loved ones close. Perrin felt a stab of pain. The graves below the apple trees flashed in his mind, but he pushed it down. Take care of the living, he reminded himself harshly. The Aes Sedai brought out her pen and ink and began making notes in that small book in a precise hand. He wondered whether she cared how many Two Rivers folk died, so long as he lived, to be used in the White Tower's plans for Rand. Fael squeezed his hand, but it was to the Aes Sedai that she spoke. Should we not take him up to a bed? Not yet, Perrin told her irritably. Varen looked up and opened her mouth, and he repeated in a firmer voice, Not yet. The Aes Sedai shrugged and went back to her note-taking. Does anyone know where Loyal is? The Ogier, one of the 3 by the door said. Dav Aelin was stockier than that, but he had that same twinkle in his dark eyes. He had the same rumpled, uncombed look about him as Matt, too. In the old days, what little mischief Matt did not get up to, Dav did, though Matt usually led the way. He's out with the men clearing back the westward. You'd think we were cutting down his brother every time we cut a tree. But he clears 3 to anybody else's 1 with that monstrous axe he had Master Luhan make. If you want him, I saw J.M. Thane running to tell them you had come in. I'll bet they all come to get a look at you. Peering at the broken-off arrow, he winced and rubbed his own side in sympathy. Does it hurt much? It hurts enough, Perrin said curtly. Coming to get a look at him. What am I, Lehman? What about Luke? I don't want to see him, but is he here? I'm afraid not. The second man, Elam Daughtry, rubbed his long nose. Incongruous with his farmer's wool coat and his cowlick, he wore a sword at his belt. The hilt had been freshly wrapped in rawhide, and the leather scabbard flaked and peeling. Lord Luke is off hunting the Horn of Valir, I think, or maybe Trollocs. Dav and Elam were Perrin's friends, or had been, companions in hunting and fishing, both his age near enough, but their thrilled grins made them seem younger. Either Matt or Rand could have passed for 5 years older at least. Maybe he could too. I hope he comes back soon, Elam went on. He has been showing me how to use a sword. Did you know he's a hunter for the horn? And a king if he had his rights. Of Andor, I hear. Andor has queens, Perrin muttered absently, meeting Fael's gaze. Not kings. So he is not here, she said. Gaul shifted slightly. He looked ready to go hunting for Luke, his eyes blue ice. It would not have surprised Perrin to see Vane and Chiad bail themselves on the spot. No, Perrin said vaguely, manifestly more intent on her notes than what she was saying. Not that he hasn't been a help sometimes, but he does have a way of causing trouble when he is here. Yesterday, before anyone knew what he was doing, he led a delegation out to meet a White Cloak patrol and told them Emmons Field was closed to them. He apparently told them not to come within 10 miles. I cannot approve of White Cloaks, but I do not suppose they took that very well. Not wise to antagonize them more than is strictly necessary. Frowning at what she had written, she rubbed her nose, seemingly unaware of leaving a smudge of ink. Perrin did not much care how the White Cloaks took anything. Yesterday, he breathed. If Luke had come back to the village yesterday, it was not likely he could have had anything to do with Trollocs being where they were not expected. The more Perrin thought about how that ambush turned around, the more he thought the Trollocs must have been expecting them. The more he wanted to blame Luke. Wanting won't make a stone cheese, he muttered. But he still smells like cheese to me. Dad and the other two looked at each other doubtfully. Perrin supposed it must not seem to be making much sense. It was a bunch of Coplans, mainly, the third fellow said, in a startlingly deep voice. Dahl and Harry and Dag and Ewa. And with Conger. Days gave him a fit over it. I heard they all liked the White Cloaks. Perrin thought the bass-voiced fellow seemed familiar. He was younger than Elam and Dab by 2 or 3 years, yet an inch taller, lean-faced, but with wide shoulders. They did, the fellow laughed. You know them. They drift naturally toward anything that makes trouble for somebody else. Since Lord Luke has been talking, they're all for marching up to Watch Hill and telling the White Cloaks to get out of the Two Rivers. Anyway, they're for somebody else marching up there. I think they mean to be well back in the pack. If that face had been
Hey, Dink Plays, how you doing?
Near the ground. Ewan Fingar, Perrin exclaimed. It could not be. Ewan was a stout, squeaky little nuisance who tried to crowd in whenever the older fellows got together. This lad would be as big as he was or bigger by the time he stopped growing. Is that you? Ewan nodded with a broad grin. We've been hearing all about you, Perrin, he said in that surprising face. Fighting Trollocs and having all kinds of adventures out in the world, so they say. I can still call you Perrin, can't I? Right, yes, Perrin barked. He was more than tired of this golden-eyed business. I wish I'd gone with you last year. Dab rubbed his hands together eagerly. Coming home with Aes Sedai and warders and an Ogier. He made them sound like trophies. All I ever do is herd cows and milk cows, herd cows and milk cows. That and hoe.
Hope everyone's doing good out there tonight.
You've had all the luck. What was it like? Elam put in breathlessly. A lot of Sedai said you've been all the way to the Great Blight. And I hear you've been to King. What's a city like? Are they really 10 times as big as Emmons Field? Are there dark friends in the cities? Is the Blight really full of Trollocs and Fades and Warders? Did a Trolloc give you that scar? Voice like a bull or not, Ellen managed a sort of squeaky excitement. I wish I had a scar. Did you see a queen or a king? I think I'd rather see a queen, but a king would be grand. What is the White Tower like? Is it as big as a palace? Fael smiled, amused, but Perrin blinked at the onslaught. Had they forgotten the Trollocs on winter night? Forgotten the Trollocs in the countryside right then? Elam clutched his sword hilt as if he wanted to be off for the Blight on the instant. Dab was up on his toes, eyes gleaming, and Ellen looked ready to grab Perrin's collar. Adventure? They were idiots. Yet there were hard times coming. Harder than the two rivers had seen so far, he was afraid. It could not hurt if they had a little while longer before they learned the truth. His side hurt, but he tried to answer. They seemed disappointed he had never seen the White Tower, or a king or a queen. He thought Verlaine might suffice for a queen, but with Fail there, he was not about to mention her. Some other things he shied away from, Fulma and the Eye of the World, Forsaken, Colindor. Dangerous subjects, those, leading inevitably to the Dragon Reborn. He could tell them a little of Camelin, though, and Tyr, of the Borderlands and the Blight. It was odd what they accepted and what not. The corrupted landscape of the Blight, seeming to rot while you looked at it, they ate up. The top-knotted Shienaran soldiers, and Ogier steady, where Aes Sedai could not wield the power, and Fades were reluctant to enter. But the size of the Stone of Tyr, or the immensity of cities. About his own supposed adventures, he said, "Mainly, I've just tried to keep from having my head split open. That's what adventures are. That and finding a place to sleep for the night and something to eat. You go hungry a lot having adventures, and sleep cold or wet or both." They did not like that very much, or appeared to believe it any more than they believed that the stone was as big as a small mountain. He reminded himself that he had known as little of the world before he left it. It did not help. He had never been this wide-eyed. The common room seemed to be hot. He would have taken his coat off, but moving seemed too much effort. "What about Rand and Matt?" Ellen demanded. "If it's all being hungry and getting rained on, why didn't they come home too?" Tam and Abel had come in, Tam with a sword belted on over his coat, and both men with bows. Oddly, the sword looked right on Tam, on coat or no. So he told it much as he had before, Matt gambling and carousing and chasing balls, Rand in his fine coat, with a pretty yellow-haired girl on his arm. He made Elaine a lady, expecting they would never believe the daughter heir of Andra, and was proved right when they expressed incredulity. Still, it all seemed satisfactory, the kind of thing they wanted to hear, and disbelief faded a bit when Elam pointed out that Fail was a lady. It seemed to be dancing attendance on Perrin pretty sharp. That made Perrin grin. He wondered what they would say if he told them she was cousin to a queen. Fail no longer appeared to be amused for some reason. She turned on him with a stare to match Elaine's haughtiest, stiff-backed and frosty-faced. "You have badgered him enough. He is wounded. Off with you now." For a wonder, they bowed clumsily, down in an awkward leg, looking a complete fool, and murmured hasty apologies to her, not him, and turned to go. Their departure was delayed by the arrival of Loyal, stooping through the doorway with his shaggy hair brushing the transom. They stared at the Ogier almost as if seeing him for the first time, then glanced at Fail and hurried on their way. That cold lady's stare of hers did work. When Loyal straightened, his head came just short of the ceiling. His capacious coat pockets bore the usual squared bulges of books, but he carried a huge axe. Its haft stood as tall as he did, and its head, shaped like a wood axe, was at least as big as Perrin's battle axe. "You are hurt," he boomed, as soon as his eyes fell on Perrin. "They told me you had returned, but they did not say you were hurt, or I would have come faster." The axe gave Perrin a start. Among Ogier, putting a long handle on your axe meant being hasty or angry. Ogier seemed to see the two as much the same thing for some reason. Loyal did look angry, tufted ears drawing back, frowning so his dangling eyebrows hung down on his broad cheeks. At having to cut trees, no doubt. Perrin wanted to get him alone and find out if he had seen anything more concerning Alana's doings. Or Baron's. He rubbed his face and was surprised to find it dry. He felt as if he should be sweating. "He is also stubborn," Fail said, turning on Perrin with the same commanding look she had used on Dav, Elon, and Ellen. "You should be in bed. Where is Alana, Baron?" If she is to heal him, where is she? She will come. The Aes Sedai did not look up. She was back into her little book again, frowning thoughtfully, pen poised. He should still be in a bed. I will have time for that later, Aaron said firmly. He smiled at her to soften it, but all that did was make her look worried and mutter stubborn under her breath. He could not ask Loyal about the Aes Sedai in front of Baron. There was something else at least as important. Loyal, the way gate is unlocked, and Trollocs coming through. How can that be? The Ogier's brows sank even deeper, and his ears wilted.
My fault, Aaron,
He rumbled mournfully.
I put both Avendasora leaves on the outside. That locked the way gate on the inside, but from the outside anyone could still open it. The ways have been dark for long generations, yet we grew them. I could not bring myself to destroy the gate. I am sorry, Baron. It is all my fault.
I did not believe a way gate could be destroyed, Aiel said.
I did not mean destroy exactly.
Loyal leaned on his long-handled axe.
A way gate was destroyed once, less than 500 years after the breaking, according to Daman, daughter of Allah, daughter of Sopera, because the gate was near a steading that had fallen to the Blight. There are 2 or 3 gates lost in the Blight as it is. But she wrote that it was very difficult and required 13 Aes Sedai working together with a Saal Grial. Another attempt she wrote of, by only 9 during the Trolloc Wars, damaged the gate in such a way that the Aes Sedai were pulled into it.
He cut off, ears wriggling with embarrassment, and knuckled his wide nose. Everyone was staring at him, even Baron and the Aiel.
I do let myself be carried away sometimes. The way gate. Yes, I cannot destroy it, but if I remove both Avendasora leaves completely, they will die.
He grimaced at the thought.
The only means of opening the gate again will be for the elders to bring the talisman of growing, though I suppose an Aes Sedai could cut a hole in it.
This time he shuddered. Damaging a way gate must have seemed like tearing up a book to him. A moment later, he was grim-faced once more.
I will go now.
No, Aaron said sharply. The arrowhead seemed to throb, but it did not really hurt anymore. He was talking too much. His throat was dry. There are Trollocs up there, Loyal. They can fit an Ogier into a cook pot as well as a human.
But paranoid.
No, Loyal. How are you going to write your book if you go off and get yourself killed? Loyal's ears twitched.
It is my responsibility, Baron.
The responsibility is mine, Baron said gently. You told me what you were doing with the Waygate, and I didn't suggest anything different. Besides, the way you jump every time your mother is mentioned, I don't want her coming after me. I will go as soon as Alana heals this arrow out of me. He wiped his forehead, then frowned at his hand. Still no sweat. Can I have a drink of water? Bair was there in an instant, her cool fingers where his hand had been. He is burning up. Baron, we cannot wait for Alana. You must... I am here, the dark Aes Sedai announced, appearing from the door at the back of the common room. Mara Nalvir and Alsbeth Luhan at her heels, and Ivan right behind them. Baron felt the tingle of the power before Alana's hand replaced Bail's, and she added in a cool, serene voice, "Carry him into the kitchen. The table there is large enough to lay him out. Quickly, there is not much time." Baron's head spun, and abruptly he realized Loyal had leaned his axe beside the door and picked him up, cradling him in his arms. The Waygate is mine, Loyal. I am thirsty. My responsibility. The arrowhead truly did not seem to hurt as much as it had, but he ached all over. Loyal was carrying him somewhere, bending through doorways. There was Mistress Luhan, biting her lip, eyes squished as if about to cry. He wondered why. She never cried. Mistress Alvier looked worried too. Mistress Luhan, he murmured. Mother says I can come be apprentice to Master Luhan. That was a long time ago. That was... What was? He could not seem to remember. He was lying on something hard, listening to Alana speak. Barbs are caught on bone as well as flesh, and the arrowhead is twisted. I must realign it with the first wound and pull it out. If the shock does not kill him, I can then heal the damage I have done as well as the rest. There is no other way. He is near the brink now. Nothing to do with him. Rael smiled down at him nervously, her face upside down. Had he really once thought her mouth was too wide? It was just right. He wanted to touch her cheek, but Mistress Alvear and Mistress Luhan were holding his wrists for some reason, leaning with all their weight. Someone was lying across his legs, too, and Loyal's big hands swallowed his shoulders, pressing them flat to the table. Yes, the kitchen table. Lie down, my heart, Rael said from far away. It will hurt. He wanted to ask her what would hurt, but she was pressing a leather-wrapped stick into his mouth. He smelled the leather and the spicewood and her. Would she come hunting with him, running across the endless grassy plains after endless herds of deer? Icy cold shivered through him. Vaguely he recognized the feel of the one power. Then there was pain. He heard the stick snap between his teeth before blackness covered everything. Chapter 44. Perrin opened his eyes slowly, staring up at the plain white plastered ceiling. It took a moment to realize he was in a four-posted bed, lying on a feather mattress with a blanket over him and a goose-down pillow under his head. A myriad of scents danced in his nose, the feathers and the wool of the blanket, the goose roasting, bread and honey cakes baking. One of the Wine Spring Inn's rooms. Unmistakable bright morning light streaming in at the white curtained windows. Morning. He fumbled at his side. Unbroken skin at his fingers, but he felt weaker than at any time since being shot. A small enough price, though, and a fair enough exchange. His throat felt parched, too. When he moved, Rael leaped up from a chair beside the small stone fireplace, tossing aside a red blanket and stretching. She had changed to a darker, narrow-skirted riding dress, and wrinkles in the gray silk said she had slept in that chair. Alana said you needed sleep, she said. He reached toward the white pitcher on the small table beside the bed, and she hurriedly poured a cup of water and held it for him to drink. You need to stay right here for another 2 or 3 days, until you have your strength back. The words sounded normal, except for an undercurrent he barely caught. The tightness at the corners of her eyes. What is wrong? She replaced the cup carefully on the bedside table and smoothed her dress. Nothing is wrong. The taut, underlying tone was even clearer. Rael, don't lie to me. I do not lie, she snapped. I will have some breakfast brought up to you, and you're lucky I do that, calling me Rael. He said her name as sternly as he could, and she hesitated, her most arrogant, chin-up glare changing to forehead-creasing worry and back again. He met her gaze straight on. She was not going to get away with any fine lady's haughty tricks with him. At last, she sighed. I suppose you have a right to know, but you are still staying in that bed until Alana and I say you can get out. Loyal and Ball are gone. Gone? He blinked in confusion. What do you mean, gone? They left? In a way. The sentry saw them go, this morning, at first light, trotting off into the westwood together. None of them thought anything of it. Certainly none tried to stop them, an Ogier and an Aiel. I heard of it less than an hour ago. They were talking about trees, Perrin. About how the Ogier sing to trees. Trees, Perrin growled. It's that bloody waygate. Burn me, I told him not to. They'll get themselves killed before they reach it. Throwing off the blanket, he swung his legs over the side of the bed, wobbling to his feet. He had nothing on, he realized, not even his small clothes. But if they expected to keep him caged under a blanket, they were sadly mistaken. He could see everything folded neatly on the tall backed chair by the door, with his boots beside it and his axe hanging from its belt from a peg on the wall. Stumbling to his clothes, he began dressing as quickly as he could. "What are you doing?" Fail demanded. "You put yourself back in that bed." One fist on her hip, she pointed commandingly, as if her finger could transport him there. "I can't have gotten that far," he told her. "Not a foot. Ball won't ride, and Loyal always did claim he trusted his own feet more than any horse. I can catch them up on Stepper by midday latest." Pulling his shirt over his head, he left it hanging loose over his breeches and sat down. Dropped, actually, to draw on his boots. "You are mad, Herr Nevara. What chance you can even find them in that forest?" "I'm not so bad at tracking myself. I can find them." He smiled at her, but she was not having any. "You can get yourself killed, you hairy fool. Look at you. You can hardly stand. You would fall out of the saddle before you had gone a mile." Hiding the effort involved, he stood and stamped his feet to settle them in his boots. Stepper would do all the work. He only needed to hold on. "Nonsense. I'm strong as a horse. Stop trying to bully me." Shrugging into his coat, he snatched up his axe and belt. Fail caught his arm as he opened the door and was pulled along, vainly trying to haul him back. "Sometimes you have the brains of a horse," she panted. "Less. Heron, you must listen to me. You must—" The room lay only a few steps along the narrow hallway from the stairs leading down to the empty common room, and it was the stairs that betrayed him. When his knee bent to lower in that first step, it kept right on bending. He toppled forward, vainly trying to catch the banister, pulling a yelling Fail with him. Rolling over and over, they tumbled down the stairs to come up with a final thud against the barrel at the bottom, Fail lying stretched full length atop him. The barrel teetered and spun, rattling the swords inside before settling with a final clank. It took a moment for Perrin to gather enough breath to speak. "Are you all right?" he said anxiously. She was sprawled limply on his chest. He shook her gently. "Fail, are you—" Slowly, she raised her head and brushed a few short strands of dark hair from her face, then stared at him intently. "Are you all right? Because if you are, I may very well do something violent to you." Perrin snorted. She was probably hurt less than he. Gingerly, he felt that where the arrow had been, but that was in no worse shape than the rest of him. Of course, the rest of him seemed bruised from head to toe. "Get off of me, Fail. I need to fetch Stepper." Instead, she seized his collar with both hands and leaned very close until their noses almost touched. "Listen to me, Perrin," she said urgently. "You cannot do everything. If Loyal and Gall have gone to lock the waygate, you must let them. Your place is here. Even if you were strong enough, and you are not, do you hear me? You are not strong enough. But even if you were, you must not go after them. You cannot do everything." "Why, whatever are you two doing?" Maren Alvear said. Wiping her hands on her long white apron, she came from the back door of the common room. Her eyebrows looked to be trying to climb into her hair. "I expected Trollocs after all that racket, but not this." She sounded half scandalized and half amused. What they looked like, Perrin realized, with Fail lying on it that way, their heads close together, was a couple playing kissing games on the floor of the common room. Fail's cheeks reddened, and she got up very quickly, dusting her dress. "He is as stubborn as a Trolloc, Mistress Alvear. I told him he was too weak to rise. He must go back to his bed immediately. He has to learn he cannot do everything himself, especially when he cannot even walk down a flight of steps." "Oh, my dear," Mistress Alvear said, shaking her head. "That is quite the wrong way." Leaning close to the younger woman, she whispered softly, but Perrin heard every word. "He was an easy little boy to manage most of the time, if you handled him properly. But when you tried to push him, he was as muley as any in the Two Rivers. Men don't really change that much, only grow taller. If you go telling him what he must and mustn't do, he will surely lay his ears back and dig his heels in. Let me show you. Moran turned a beaming smile on him, ignoring his glare. Perrin, don't you think one of my good goose feather mattresses is better than that floor? I'll bring you some of my kidney pie just as soon as we have you tucked in. You must be hungry after no supper last night. Here, why don't you let me help you up? Pushing their hands away, he stood on his own. Well, with the aid of the wall. He thought he might have sprained half the muscles in his body. Muley? He had never been muley in his life. Mistress Alvear, would you have Hugh or Tad saddle stepper? When you're better, she said, trying to turn him toward the stairs. Don't you think you could do with just a little more rest? Fael took his other arm. Trollocs! The cry from outside came muffled through the walls, echoed by a dozen voices. Trollocs! Trollocs! That needn't concern you today, Mistress Alvear said, firm and soothing at the same time. It made him want to grit his teeth. The Aes Sedai will handle things nicely. In a day or two, we'll have you back on your feet. You'll see. My horse, he said, trying to pull free. They had good holds on his coat sleeves. All he accomplished was swinging them back and forth. For the love of the light, will you stop tugging at me and let me get my horse? Let go of me! Looking at his face, Fael sighed and released his arm. Mistress Alvear, will you have his horse saddled and brought around? But, my dear, he really needs... If you please, Mistress Alvear, Fael said firmly. And my horse, too. The two women looked at each other as if he did not exist. At last, Mistress Alvear nodded. Perrin frowned at her back as she hurried across the common room and vanished toward the kitchen and the stable. What had Fael said different from what he had? Turning his attention to her, he said, Why did you change your mind? Tucking his shirt in for him, she muttered under her breath. Doubtless, he was not supposed to hear well enough to understand. I mustn't say much, must I? When he is too stubborn to see straight, I must lead him with honey and smiles, must I? She shot him a glare that surely had no honey in it, then abruptly changed to a smile so sweet he very nearly backed away. My dear, she almost cooed, pulling his coat straight. Whatever is happening out there, I do hope you will stay in your saddle, and as far from Trollocs as you can. You really are not up to facing a Trolloc just yet, are you? Maybe tomorrow. Please remember you are a general, a leader, and every bit as much a symbol to your people as that banner out there. If you are up where people can see you, it will lift everyone's heart. And it is much easier to see what needs doing and give orders if you aren't in the fighting yourself. Picking his belt off the floor, she buckled it around his waist, settling the axe carefully on his hip. She also batted her eyes at him. Please say you do that. Please. She was right. He would not last 2 minutes against a Trolloc. More like 2 seconds against a Thade. And as much as he hated to admit it, he would not last 2 miles in the saddle chasing after Loyal and Gold. Fool, here. You're a rider, not a hero. All right, he said. A mischievous impulse seized him. The way she and Mistress Alvear had been talking over his head, batting her eyes as if he were a fool. I can't refuse you anything when you smile so prettily. I am glad. Still smiling, she brushed at his coat, picking lint he could not see. Because if you don't, and you manage to survive, I'll do to you what you did to me that first day in the ways. I don't think you are strong enough yet to stop me. That smile beamed up into his face, all springy from his sweetness. Do you understand me?
Ozzy's a little restless tonight.
Sounds as if I had better let them kill me. She did not seem to think that was funny. Hugh and Tad, the lanky stableman, led Stepper and Swallow around soon after they stepped outside. Everyone else seemed to be gathered at the far end of the village, beyond the green. with its sheep and cows and geese, and that crimson and white wolf-head banner rippling on the morning breeze. As soon as he and Fail were up on their horses, the stableman took off running that way too, without a word. Whatever was going on, it was clearly not an attack. He could see women and children in the crowd, and the shouts of Trolloc had died down to a murmur like an echo of the geese. He rode slowly, not wanting to waver in his saddle. Fail kept Swallow close, watching him. If she could change her mind once for no reason, she could again, and he did not want any arguments about whether he should be there. The babbling crowd did appear to contain everyone in Emmons Field, villagers and farmers alike, all jammed shoulder to shoulder. But they made way for him and Fail when they saw who he was. His name entered the murmurs, usually tagged with golden eyes. He picked up the word Trollocs too, but in tones more wondering than frightened. From Stepper's back, he had a good view over their heads. The knotted mass of people stretched all the way beyond the last houses to the hedge of sharpened stakes. The edge of the forest, nearly 600 paces off across a field of stumps, nearly level with the ground, was quiet and empty of men with axes. Those men made a sweaty, bare-chested ring in the crowd surrounding Alana and Baron and two men. John Thane, the miller, was wiping a smear of blood from his ribs, lantern jaw, on his chest so he could stare at what his hands were doing. Alana straightened from the other man. The grizzle-haired fellow Baron did not know, leaped to his feet and danced a step, as if not quite believing he could. He and the miller both looked at the Aes Sedai with awe. The tangle around the Aes Sedai was too tight for anyone to shift aside for Stepper and Swallow, but there were smaller, clear pockets around Ivan and Tomas, off to either side on their war horses. Folk did not want to come too near those fierce-eyed animals, both looking as though they only wanted an opportunity to bite or trample. Baron managed to reach Tomas without too much trouble. What happened?
The Trolloc? Only one.
Despite the graying warder's conversational tone, his dark eyes did not rest on Baron and Fail, but kept an almost equal watch on Baron and on the tree line.
They usually are not very smart alone. Sly, but not smart.
The timbering party drove it away before it did more than draw some blood. From out of the trees, the two Aiel women appeared, running, heads shufel-wrapped and veiled so he could not tell which was which. They slowed to snake between the sharp-pointed stakes, then slipped deftly through the crowd, people moving out of their way as much as possible in that press. By the time they reached Fail, they had unveiled, and she leaned down to listen. Perhaps 500 Trollocs, Bane told her. Probably no more than a mile or two behind us. Her voice was level, but her dark eyes sparkled with eagerness. So did Chiad's gray.
As I expected, Tomas said calmly. That one likely wandered off from the larger party, hoping to find a meal. The rest will be coming soon, I think.
The maidens nodded. Baron gestured in consternation at the jam of people. They shouldn't be out here, then. Why haven't you cleared them away? It was Ivan, bringing his gray into the gathering, who answered. Your people do not seem to want to listen to outsiders, not when they can watch Aes Sedai. I would suggest you see what you can do. Baron was sure they could have imposed some sort of order had they really tried. Baron and Alana surely could have. So why did they wait and leave it to me if they expected Trollocs? It would have been easy to put it down to Tavira, easy and foolish. Ivan and Tomas were not going to let Trollocs kill them, or Baron or Alana, while waiting for a Taviran to tell them what to do. The Aes Sedai were maneuvering him, risking everyone, maybe even themselves. But to what possible end? He met Fail's eyes, and she nodded slightly, as if she knew what he was thinking. He had no time to try figuring it out now. Scanning the crowd, he spotted Bran Alvier putting his head together with Tam Althor and Abel Coffin. The mayor had a long spear on his shoulder and a dented old round steel cap on his head. A leather jerkin sewn all over with steel discs strained around his bulk. All three men looked up when Perrin pushed Stepper through the crowd to them. Bane says Trollocs are heading this way, and the warders think we may be attacked soon. he had to shout because of the incessant drone of voices. Some of the nearer folk heard and fell silent. Quiet spread in ripples of frolic and attack. Bran blinked. Yes, it had to come, didn't it? Yes, well, we know what to do. He should have looked comic, with his jerkin ready to pop its seams and his steel cap wobbling when he nodded. But he only looked determined. Raising his voice, he announced, Aaron says the Trollocs will be here soon. You all know your places. Hurry now, hurry! The crowd stirred and flowed. Women herding children back toward the houses, men milling every which way. Confusion seemed to grow more rather than less. I'll see to getting the shepherds in, Abel told Darren, and dove into the throng. Sen Bowie pushed past in the moil, using a halberd to herd sour-faced Harry Coughlin and Harry's brother Darl, and old Billy Conger, who staggered as if already full of ale this morning, which he probably was. Of the three, Billy carried his spear most as if he meant to use it. Sen touched his forehead to Darren in a sort of salute. A number of the men did. It made him uncomfortable. Daniel and the other lads were one thing, but these were men half again his age and more. You are doing fine, Bayou said. I wish I knew what Baron and Alana were up to, he muttered. And I don't mean right now. Two of the catapults the warders had built stood at this end of the village, squarish things, taller than a man, all heavy timbers and thick, twisted ropes. From their horses, Ivan and Tomas were overseeing the stout wooden beams being winched down. The two Aes Sedai were more interested in the big field stones, 15 or 20 pounds each, being loaded in cups on the end of those arms. They mean you to be a leader, Bayou replied quietly. It is what you were born for, I think. Aaron snorted. He had been born to be a blacksmith. I'd be a lot more comfortable if I knew why they wanted it. The Aes Sedai were looking at him, Baron with her head tilted bird-like, Alana with a franker stare and a small smile. Did they both want the same thing and for the same reason? That was one of the troubles with Aes Sedai. There were always more questions than answers. Order asserted itself with surprising quickness. Along this west end of the village, 100 men knelt on one knee, right behind the bristle of stakes, uneasily fingering spears or halberds or some polearm made from a bushhook or scythe. Here and there, one wore a helmet or some bit of armor. To their rear, twice as many formed two lines holding good Two Rivers longbows, each with a pair of quivers at his belt. Young boys came running from the houses with bundles of more arrows, but the men drove point down in the ground in front of their feet. Tam seemed to be in charge, dressing the ranks and speaking a few words to each man, but Bran marched along with him, offering his own encouragement. Baron could not see that they needed him at all. To his surprise, Daniel and Ben and all the other lads who had ridden with him came trotting out of the village to surround him and Fail, all with their bows. They looked odd, in a way. The Aes Sedai had apparently healed the more seriously injured, leaving those less hurt for Daze's poultices and ointments. So fellows who had been barely clinging to a saddle yesterday walked along sprightly now, while Daniel and Tell and others still limped or wore bandages. If he was surprised to see them, he was disgusted by what they brought. Left Torfin, the dressing wrapped around his head, making a pale cap above his deep-set eyes, had his bow slung on his back and carried a tall staff with a smaller version of the red-bordered banner with its wolf head. I think one of the Aes Sedai had it made, Left said when Baron asked where it came from. Millie Ellen brought it to Will's da, but Will didn't want to carry it. Will, all seen, hunched his shoulders a bit. I wouldn't want to carry it either, Baron said dryly. They all laughed as if he had made a joke, even Will, after a minute. The hedge of stakes looked fierce enough, but on the other hand, it seemed a pitiful thing to keep Trollocs out. Maybe it would. But he did not want Fail there if they made it through. When he looked at her, though, she had that look in her eyes again, as if she knew what he was thinking, and did not like it. If he tried to send her back, she would argue and balk, refusing to see sense. Weak as he felt right then, she probably had a better chance of leading him back to the inn than he her. The way she was sitting her saddle so ferociously, she likely intended to defend him if the Trollocs broke through. He would just have to keep a close eye on her. That was all there was to it. Suddenly she smiled, and he scratched his beard. Maybe she could read his mind. Time passed, the sun inching up, the day's warmth building. Now and then a woman called from the houses to ask what was happening. Here and there, men sat down, but Tam or Bran was on them before they had their legs folded, chivying them back into line. No more than a mile or two, Bane had said. She and Chiad were sitting near the stakes playing some game that apparently involved flipping a knife into the foot of ground between them. Surely, if the Trollocs were coming, they would have come by now. He was beginning to find it hard to sit up straight. Conscious of Fail's watchful eyes, he kept his back stiff. A horn blared, brazen and shrill. "Trollocs!" half a dozen voices shouted. Bestial, black-mailed shapes flooded out of the westwood, howling as they ran across the stumpy ground, waving scythe-curved swords and spiked axes, spears, and tridents. 3 Murdraw rode behind them on black horses, darting back and forth as though driving the Trolloc charge before them. Their dead black cloaks hung motionless no matter how their mounts dashed or whirled. The horn sounded continuously in sharp, urging cries. 20 arrows leaped out as soon as the first Trolloc appeared, the strongest shot falling nearly 100 paces short. "Hold, you lack-witted sheep-brains!" Tam shouted. Bran jumped and gave him a startled look, no less incredulous than those coming from Tam's friends and neighbors. Some muttered about not standing still for that kind of talk, Trollocs or no Trollocs. Tam rode right over their protests, though. "You hold till I give the word, the way I showed you." Then, as if hundreds of shrieking Trollocs were not galloping toward him, Tam turned calmly to Perrin. "At 300 paces?" Perrin nodded quickly. The man was asking him. 300 paces. How quickly could a Trolloc cover 300 paces? He eased his axe in its loop. That horn wailed and wailed. The spearmen crouched behind the stakes as if forcing themselves not to edge back. The Aiel had veiled their faces. Onward the screaming tide came, all horned heads and faces with snouts or beaks, each half again as tall as a man, each shrieking for blood. 500 paces, 400. Some stretching out in front. They ran as fast as horses. Had the Aiel been right? Could there be only 500? It looked like thousands. "Ready?" Tam called, and 200 bows were raised. The young men with Perrin hurriedly formed up in front of him in imitation of their elders, ranking themselves with that pool banner. 300 paces. Perrin could see those misshapen faces, contorted with rage and frenzy, as clearly as if they were right on top of him. "Loose!" Tam shouted. Bowstrings slapped like one huge whip crack. With twin crashes of beam against leather-padded beam, the catapults fired. Broadhead arrows rained down into the Trollocs. Monstrous shapes fell, but some rose and staggered on, harried by the fades. That horn wove into their guttural bellowing, sounding forward for the kill. The catapult's stones fell among them and exploded in fire and shards, ripping open holes in the mass. Perrin was not the only one to jump, so that was what the Aes Sedai had been doing with the catapults. He wondered wildly what would happen if they dropped one of those stones, loading it into the cup. Another flight of arrows leaped out, and another, and again, and more stones from the catapults, if at a slower pace. Fiery explosions tore at the Trollocs. Broadhead points hailed down on them, and they came on, shrieking, howling, falling, and dying, but always running forward. They were close now. Close enough that the bowmen spread out, no longer firing in flights, but choosing their targets. Men screamed their own rage, screamed in the face of death as they shot. And then there were no more Trollocs standing. Only one Fade, bristling with arrows, yet still staggering blindly. The shrill shrieks of a Murdroll's thrashing horse competed with the moaning bellows of downed and dying Trollocs. The horn had fallen silent at last. Here and there across the stump-filled field, a Trolloc heaved and fell back. Under it all, Perrin could hear men panting as if they had run 10 miles. His own heart seemed to be pounding out of his chest. Suddenly someone raised a loud huzzah, and with that, men began capering and shouting euphorically, waving bows or whatever they had over their heads, tossing caps in the air. Women rushed out from the houses, laughing and cheering, and children, all celebrating and dancing with the men. Some came running to grab Perrin's hand and shake it. "You've led us to a great victory, my boy!" Bran laughed up at him. He had his steel cap perched on the back of his head. "I suppose I shouldn't call you that now. A great victory, Perrin." "I didn't do anything," he protested. "I just sat on my horse. You did it." Bran listened no more than any of the others. Embarrassed, Perrin sat up straight, pretending to survey the field, and after a while they left him alone. Tam had not joined in the celebrating. He stood close behind the stakes, studying the Trollocs. The warders were not laughing either. Black-mailed shapes littered the field among the low stumps. There could be 500 of them, maybe less. Some, a few, might have made it back to the trees. None lay closer than 50 paces from the pointed hedge. Perrin found the other 2 Fades, writhing on the ground. That accounted for all 3. They would admit they were dead eventually. The 2 Rivers folk raised a thunderous cheer for him. "Perrin Goldeneyes! Huzzah! Huzzah! Huzzah!" "They had to know," he muttered. Faye looked at him questioningly. The half-men had to know this wouldn't work. Look out there. Even I can see it now. They must have from the start. If this was all they had, why did they try? And if there are more Trollocs out there, why didn't they all come? Twice as many, and we'd have had to fight them at the stakes. Twice that, and they might have broken through to the village. "You've a good natural eye," Tomas said, reining him beside them. "This was a test, to see if you would break at the sight of a charge, perhaps to see how quickly you could react, or how your defenses are organized, or maybe something I've not thought of, but still a test. Now they see." He pointed to the sky where a lone raven winged over the field. A natural raven would have lighted to feast among the dead. The bird completed a last circle and peeled off toward the forest. "The next attack will not come right away. I saw 2 or 3 Trollocs reach the forest, so word of this will spread. The half-men will have to make them remember they're more afraid of Murdroll than of dying. That attack will come, however, and it will certainly be stronger than this. How strong depends on how many the Faceless have brought through the ways." Perrin grimaced. "Light. What if there are 10,000 of them?" "Not likely," Perrin said, walking up to pat Tomas's mount on the neck. The warhorse allowed her touch as meekly as a pony. "At least, not yet. Not even a Forsaken could move a large party through the ways safely, I think. One man alone risks death or madness between the closest way gates, but say 1,000 men, or 1,000 Trollocs, would very likely draw Machin Shin within minutes. A monstrous wasp to a bowl of honey. It is much more probable that they travel no more than 10 or 20 together, 50 at most. And the groups spaced out. Of course, the questions remain of how many groups they are bringing and how much time they allow to elapse between. And they would lose some anyway. It might be that Shadowspawn attract Machin Shin less than humankind, but fascinating thought. I wonder." Patting Tomas on the leg much in the manner she had patted his horse, she turned away, already lost in study. The warder heeled his horse after her. "If you ride even one step near the westwood," Ayil said calmly, "I will haul you back to the inn by your ear and stuff you into that bed myself." "I wasn't thinking of it," Perrin lied, turning step or so his back was to the woods. One man and an ogier might escape notice, make it to the mountains in safety. They might. The waygate had to be locked permanently if Emmons Field was to have any chance. You talked me out of it, remember? Another man might find them, knowing they were there. 3 sets of eyes could keep sharper watch than 2, especially when one set was his. And he was certainly not doing anything here. His clothes, stuffed with straw and set on stepper, could do as much. Suddenly, above the shouting and carrying on around him, he heard sharper shouts, clamor from the south, near the old road. He said they wouldn't come again soon, he growled, dug his heels into Stepper's flanks. Chapter 45. The Tinker's Sword. Galloping through the village with Fail at his heels, Baron found the men on the south side in a cluster, peering out over the cleared fields and muttering, some with bows half drawn. 2 wagons blocked the gap the old road made in the sharp stakes. The nearest low stone fence still standing, bordering a field at the back, lay 500 paces off, with nothing between, taller than barley stubble. The ground short of it sprouted arrows like weeds. Smoke curled up in the far distance, a dozen or more thick black plumes, some wide enough to be fields burning. Sen Bowie was there, and Hare and Darl Coughlin. Billy Conger had an arm around the shoulders of his cousin Whit, Daze's bony husband, who looked as if he wished Billy would not breathe on him.
Alright, everyone, I'm gonna call into this live for tonight. But I want to thank everyone for stopping by and everyone who keeps stopping by. I appreciate all y'all's support. Until next time, everyone, y'all stay safe.